The story kicks off with a young warrior gasping for air, clearly overwhelmed as he squares off against a terrifying monster. This towering creature turns out to be none other than Kerberos, the wingless dragon, a high-level dungeon boss feared by many. Found deep within level 67, the massive beast unleashes a brutal fire attack, instantly placing the entire party of adventurers in a life-threatening situation. Gripped by fear, the team's sorceress yells out a warning. She admits, trembling, that she isn't sure her defensive spell will be enough to withstand the oncoming blaze. But before anyone can act, the group's armored elder suddenly freezes, eyes widening. He's seen something unexpected. Out of the searing flames, a small green figure bursts into view. It's a goblin, an odd sight in such a deadly zone. The dragon snarls again, gearing up for another lethal blast, while the rest of the team stares in disbelief. Whispers spread. What could a goblin possibly be doing in a place like this? Then, in a flash, the goblin dashes forward with astonishing speed. Without pausing, the little creature swiftly dodges out of the attack zone and slams its wooden club into the dragon in a vicious counterattack. The adventurers are frozen in place, unable to process what just happened. The blonde youth among them stares in shock, questioning aloud how something so small could bring down such a monstrous opponent with such raw strength. Gradually, the truth sinks in. Kerberos, the mighty wingless dragon, has fallen to a single strike from a mere goblin. Confusion spreads. Was the goblin summoned by someone? The old man's sharp eyes catch movement on a nearby hill. He raises his hand, pointing out a lone figure in the distance. Everyone turns, and as the dust begins to settle, it becomes clear this man was behind the summoning. The mystery begins to unravel. Sometime before this shocking battle, far from the battlefield, the story shifts to a different scene. Kimchi Sue, the protagonist, is seen working a construction job. Despite the hard labor, he wears a cheerful smile that catches the attention of his co-workers, who ask why he seems so unusually happy. With a bag of cement slung over his shoulder, Kimchi Sue is deep in thought. Inwardly, he reflects on his reality. He thinks of himself as nothing more than a lowly goblin, weak, ordinary, and trapped in the lower levels of life. Even as he pauses to take a drink of water, his thoughts don't stray far from his frustration. Some people, he muses, seem to strike gold overnight. But others, people like him, remain nobodies no matter how much experience they gather. While lost in thought, he overhears his co-workers chatting about a man named Mr. Cha, who stopped coming to work. The reason? He's now making a living off Gate of Heaven, a virtual reality game that swept the world by storm. Fully immersive, the game blurs the line between reality and fantasy. Within its digital universe, players who discover hidden classes can earn unimaginable wealth. Kimchi Sue's memory stirs. He remembers hearing about this game, which had only recently launched. It was so captivating that players often lost track of the real world entirely. As the technology became more advanced, the price of the equipment rose, putting it out of reach for many. Luckily, internet cafes made it possible for even the less fortunate, like Kim, to step into the virtual world. The game's popularity didn't just grow, it exploded. Real-world money began to flood in, with powerful in-game items being sold for actual currency. A new kind of economy was taking shape inside the game. Kimchi Sue's thoughts ended on a bittersweet note, tinged with longing for the days when he truly enjoyed the game. The scene transitioned into the digital realm, where Kim was fully immersed in battle. He activated one of his combat skills, Rock Strike, launching a full-force attack. The blow landed cleanly, and in return, he received 3 ores as a reward. But the small win did little to ease his irritation. With a loud scream, Kim vented his frustration, calling the situation absurd. Despite putting in so much effort, the grind just never seemed to end. Even within this virtual world, he felt buried under a mountain of debt. He couldn't hold back anymore. Tears welled up as he yelled, wondering aloud when the part of the game would begin where he becomes a legendary hero, marries a beautiful woman, and lives the fantasy he always dreamed of. He questioned whether Gate of Heaven was even worth his time. In that moment of despair, Kim suddenly froze. His eyes widened as he spotted something glimmering nearby, an advanced healing crystal. His mind raced. This rare item could fetch at least 300,000 won. Elation surged through him. He erupted into wild laughter, overwhelmed with joy. This, he thought, was exactly why he endured the backbreaking mining. It was moments like this that made it all worthwhile. But his celebration was cut short when he realized he wasn't alone. A few players had appeared behind him, observing his outburst. One of the women in the group took note of his strange behavior. Embarrassment washed over him as he slowly turned around and saw them watching. Then his eyes landed on the woman's face, and he froze again, this time stunned by her breathtaking beauty. She approached and said casually that she had noticed him mining every day, so she figured his mining skill must be quite high. Trying not to seem flustered, Kim replied that he was all right at it. She then explained that her party was passing through the dungeon, but a huge boulder was blocking their way. Though her team members were powerful, none of them had the mining expertise needed to clear the path. She politely asked Kim Chil-soo if he could lend them a hand. Kim hesitated. He pointed out that his level was quite low, and going any deeper could put him in serious danger. Before he could finish the thought, one of the team members, short in stature and clearly a dwarf, spoke up confidently. He reassured Kim that his only task would be mining. The team would handle any monsters they encountered. Kim turned a bit surprised. He hadn't expected that from a dwarf. The dwarf noticed Kim's reaction and immediately called it out, accusing him of assuming that, just because he was a dwarf, he'd be the one doing the digging. He added that Kim probably thought dwarves weren't useful in battle. The dwarf's tone made it clear he felt offended by that stereotype. Kim took a breath and weighed the situation. Maybe this wasn't such a bad opportunity. He could gain some decent experience and possibly unearth a few more valuable ores. But deep down, he still felt nervous. The group was already pretty far into the dungeon, and he couldn't shake the sense of dread building in his gut. He remembered the dangerous entity that roamed this world, something terrifying enough to make players tremble, even in a game where resurrection was possible. Just the idea of encountering it made him feel uneasy. The beautiful woman stepped closer again, smiling sweetly. She made another request for his help, saying that he was exactly her type, a strong-armed man who knew how to mine. Kim's heart skipped a beat. Emotions rushed over him, and without thinking, he agreed. But the moment the words left his mouth, regret kicked in. He immediately questioned his decision, wondering why he had jumped in so carelessly. Soon after, they entered the cave. A monster appeared, its name, Gay Wolf. It was a level 7 beast, and Kim's reaction was immediate panic. Even though it wasn't as high level as he feared, the truth hit him. His current power was still nowhere near enough to deal with threats like this. The wolf charges at him with terrifying speed, and Kim instinctively screams in pure panic, crying out for his mother like a frightened child. But just before the beast can strike, a sudden burst of flames lights up the battlefield. A stunning woman appears, unleashing her fire spell, Salamander Flame, and effortlessly incinerating the monster. She walks over to check on Kim, her tone filled with concern as she asks if he's hurt. This powerful woman is Catherine Lee, a level 39 sorceress. Kim stares at her in awe, completely blown away by how she wiped out the enemy with a single attack. He quickly expresses his gratitude for saving him. Catherine gently warns him not to stray too far from her again. It's far too dangerous. For a brief moment, Kim dares to hope that this might be the beginning of the romantic adventure he's always dreamed of. Just then, another teammate joins the scene. A confident and muscular young man effortlessly dodges incoming monster attacks and scoffs at the situation, making it clear they're not there to fool around. With commanding energy, he activates a skill called Swing of the Giant Wheel, wiping out the rest of the monsters in one powerful move. He casually explains that they're on a mission to find a rare ore, one that can only be broken with high-level mining proficiency. That's the real reason Kim was brought along. But despite being invited specifically for this skill, Kim can't shake the feeling of being looked down on. The way they talk to him makes it obvious they see him as nothing more than a tool. Annoyed and insulted, Kim finally speaks up. He confronts the warrior directly, telling him he's not someone to be brushed aside. He insists that he has combat abilities too and refuses to be treated as a mere minor. Fueled by anger, Kim slams his fist into a massive boulder, yelling as he puts everything into the strike. He's determined to prove that he's not weak. But when the dust settles, the tall man and the dwarf quietly observe that the rock hasn't even cracked. They begin to question whether the intel they got about the orb behind the stone was even real. With tension rising, the tall man threatens the dwarf, warning him of the consequences if the information turns out to be false. Meanwhile, Kim feels a fresh wave of humiliation. He's been through enough, always being disrespected, risking his life for pocket change. Even now, he feels like he's hit rock bottom. He exhales slowly, trying to calm his frustration and deciding to just get the job done, convincing himself it's just another dull day. Then, something unbelievable happens. With a sudden crack, the rock splits apart. The entire team stares dumbfounded. Behind the rubble, something mysterious glows. Kim has uncovered a hidden door. It's a hidden dungeon. Shock spreads across the group, and Kim can hardly believe what he's looking at. His voice trembles with excitement as he declares that this discovery could mean huge rewards and even a shot at unlocking hidden classes. Overjoyed, Kim calls it the grand prize. Catherine smirks and sarcastically questions whether Kim is really part of the we. But Kim is too excited to care. For the first time, he feels like this might be his turning point, the moment he can escape his miserable routine and finally change his life, just like Mr. Cha. Then, without warning, everything shatters. The tall man suddenly activates PvP mode and attacks Kim violently. The blow sends him crashing to the ground, groaning in pain as 480 health points are ripped away. He struggles to breathe as the man mocks how hard it was just to find this hidden dungeon. Catherine joins in, mocking the situation too. She scoffs at the idea that all it took to reach this place was a low-level mining skill. Kim's eyes narrow as he listens to them. The words sting, especially when the tall man arrogantly claims that Kim had only been tagging along while they handled all the fighting. At that moment, the realization hits him like a second punch. They were the ones who turned on him. They knew about the hidden dungeon from the beginning. They used him. Grabbing Kim's head roughly, the tall man leans in close and laughs cruelly. Of course they knew, and since Kim helped them just a bit, they'll kill him quickly. Kim's eyes widen in shock, completely stunned by the betrayal. When he comes to, Kim finds himself still inside the dungeon. At first, Kim thinks maybe they didn't kill him after all. Maybe they spared him out of pity. But then his heart sinks. He notices the advanced healing crystal he kept shattered. It had activated automatically when his health dropped to 0, meaning he actually died, and was revived. The realization hits him hard. The crystal was worth 300,001, and now it's gone. He screams out in pure rage. But as he's still burning with fury, Kim notices something. The door to the hidden dungeon is still wide open. The dungeon hasn't been cleared, and after losing something so valuable, Kim knows there's no going back. He clenches his fists, swearing revenge on the party that mocked him. He's going to ruin everything for them. He's going to flip the table and turn his life upside down. He charges toward the glowing door at full force, shouting with all the fire in his chest that the hidden dungeon is waiting for him. But the moment he enters, chaos. The entrance isn't flat. Instead, there are stairs. Kim doesn't see them in time. He falls hard inside, crashing against the stone steps, his body taking another brutal hit. His health drops again, minus 80 points. In pain and frustration, he shouts angrily. They put stairs right after the entrance. When Kimchi Su finally regains consciousness, he finds himself lying on the cold dungeon floor. It's dark, silent. He groans as he sits up, and his heart skips. He's inside the hidden dungeon, but his health bar is barely hanging on. Only 20 points left. As he looks up, his eyes widen in disbelief. Sitting ahead of him is a massive, terrifying goblin, sitting like a king on a throne. Floating above, it is a glowing label, Temple of the Goblins. Kim frowns in confusion and mockery. He expected a secret dungeon to be something grand, something dangerous, not just goblins. But then, something feels off. The entire area is silent. Too silent. Kim looks around nervously, wondering where the rest of the team went. That's when he notices it, a hand lying limply on the ground beside him. His breath catches. As he follows the sound and turns toward it, he freezes in horror. Lying on the floor, drenched in blood, is the dwarf. The same dwarf who was part of the group. Kim recognizes him immediately and feels a cold wave rush through him. What happened to him? A glowing screen pops up in front of Kim, asking if he has a resurrection skill. He mutters sadly that he doesn't, then guesses maybe the dwarf just doesn't want to press the button. Maybe he's too greedy to lose the chance to explore the dungeon. But before Kim can make sense of anything, a red warning flashes across his screen. A message appears. The dungeon you've entered is extremely difficult and far above your current level. Please leave immediately. And then a scream. Loud. Horrible. Kim spins around in panic. The voice, it belongs to one of the other party members. And then, out of nowhere, a massive hand appears. It grabs the tall man and crushes him violently. Kim stares in horror. This isn't some goblin. This is something else. And it's not just strong, it's on another level. The monster steps out of the shadows, its grotesque form towering over the others. Its name appears, Yerger, level 80. Kim's heart pounds in his chest. Level 80? He can't believe it. This was supposed to be a goblin temple. What is this thing doing here? He watches as Yerger grabs the tall man again and begins to devour him, violently, brutally. The sight turns Kim's stomach. The sounds, the gore, it's too much. He grips his chest and tries not to throw up. He forces himself to think. This can't be real, but it feels real. He remembers that Gate of Heaven uses a unique technology, one that replicates pain, emotion, even trauma. He thought safety systems were in place to prevent it from being too painful, but that only applied to low-level zones. And this was not low-level. Another scream slices through the air. It's Catherine. She's begging for help. Kim's legs freeze. He doesn't move. What can he possibly do against something like that? But his mind keeps racing. This isn't just a game. In rare cases, if the brain experiences too much pain, it can lead to real consequences. Even brain damage. Even death. Fear takes over. Kim starts running, away from the monster, away from the screams. He pants heavily, stumbling, swearing he won't die here. Not like this. As he runs, he tells himself again and again, it's not my fault. They left me. They betrayed me first. He admits to himself he's weak. He can't help anyone. And yet, he has to live. Just then, a strange message appears in front of him. The Goblin Lord senses a resemblance between you and him in cowardice and weakness. Kim freezes. What does that mean? He turns and looks up at the Goblin Lord sitting calmly on his throne. Kim feels something deep crack inside. Is that really what he is? Weak? Cowardly? Kim Chi-Su clenches his fists, his teeth grinding in anger. He stares at the Goblin Lord and says with a trembling voice, full of sadness and fury, I don't want to be that way. His eyes shift toward Catherine's battered body on the ground. The monster tramples her. Blood splashes. Kim chokes back a sob. He remembers his real life, the crushing debt his unknown parents left behind, the jobs he couldn't get, the humiliation, the fact that no one respected him. Not in real life, not in the game. He wanted to fight monsters, be strong, live with dignity, but they shove him into mining. Kim bursts into tears. I haven't been able to achieve anything I wanted in life, and I didn't do anything wrong to deserve being labeled as weak. He wipes his face and storms forward, staring down the Goblin Lord with all the fire in his heart. You're just a goblin. Who are you to look down on me? His voice shakes as he yells. Even in real life, I was looked down on. Even in this game, they looked down on me. Now even a goblin pities me? Overwhelmed, Kim shouted that he truly was a nobody, and there was nothing wrong with that. Just then, a message popped up in front of him. He had become an honorary goblin, and goblins would now aid him at any time. Immediately after, another message followed. He had met the conditions to unlock a hidden class. It asked if he wanted to change his class to Goblin Summoner. Kim stared at the message in shock, trying to make sense of what a hidden class even meant. Despite the seemingly golden opportunity, Kim bitterly laughed and angrily rejected the offer, calling it ridiculous. But the system ignored his refusal. It coldly informed him that the class change to Goblin had already been completed. Kim's frustration boiled over, and just as he tried to process what was happening, the terrifying monster Jagger returned, roaring dreadfully as it approached him. Kim realized that escape was no longer possible. There was no point in running anymore. There was no coming back from this. Forced into action, Kim activated a skill from his newly changed class and summoned a goblin to fight for him. In response, a small, weak-looking goblin appeared, shrieking in a high-pitched tone. Kim was instantly disappointed by its pathetic appearance and planned to use it as bait so he could run away. He ordered the goblin to attack the monster and shouted encouragement, telling it to take the beast down. Surprisingly, the goblin charged forward with force. Jagger lunged into attack, brutal and aggressive. Kim turned to escape, convinced this was his moment to flee. But before he could move, he froze in disbelief. The frail goblin he summoned had just landed a devastating blow on the monster. Damage numbers exploded on screen, reading around 100 million points. Jagger collapsed, completely defeated. Kim stood there, stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His experience points surged at a ridiculous rate. More system messages appeared, notifying him of new skills like goblin feeding and goblin walking. The summoned goblin's experience also skyrocketed. Kim could barely keep up. He finally realized in total shock that the weak-looking goblin was actually the strongest possible. It was max level. He stood frozen, his thoughts flashing back to the moment Jagger devoured the tall man from his team, piercing through his body and leaving him torn apart. Meanwhile, in the real world, Catherine looked absolutely horrified as she witnessed the scene unfold. Her face went pale with fear. Unable to handle what she was seeing, she screamed uncontrollably while still wearing the virtual reality headset. One of her staff rushed to her side, calling out in panic, trying to wake her. The staff member quickly pulled off the headset, realizing things had spiraled out of control. The man stared at her, heart sinking, as he realized Catherine had suffered a deep psychological shock, one so severe that she would never return to the game. She had entered a state of permanent retirement. Back in the game, the summoned goblin continued rampaging through monsters with terrifying ease, each strike causing millions in damage. Messages flooded Kim's screen as his level kept rising with every monster the goblin killed. Kim, overwhelmed by the notifications, eventually told the goblin to pause so he could gather the loot. He grinned as his bag filled with valuable drops, low-grade mana stones, wolf claws, until he could carry no more. He thought to himself that the moment Jagger fell, the hidden dungeon had been cleared. Yet everyone else in his team was dead. And now, the only exit was through death. He turned to look at the goblin that had solo cleared the entire dungeon and noticed something strange. Its level hadn't increased at all. Meanwhile, his own level had jumped to 31. Curious, Kim tried to view the goblin's stats, but the system denied access. The information was unavailable. Kim stared at the goblin in complete confusion, questioning how something that looked so weak could be this powerful. He began to suspect it might be a bug or glitch in the game. Suddenly, Kim shouted with excitement. None of it mattered. What mattered was that he could take advantage of this situation before anyone fixed it. Proudly, he declared that he didn't need to work in mining anymore. He would rise to the top of Gate of Heaven. The next day, Kim appeared at NAR Bank. His number 36 was called, and he sat in front of the clerk. She informed him that the wolf claws he brought in were worth 97.01 and asked if he wanted the amount transferred to his account. Kim requested the money be sent to another account instead. Then he remembered he had more items to sell and told the clerk about them. When Kim mentioned items like Jagger's membrane and heart, the clerk's eyes widened. The value of what he held stunned her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Immediately, She called for the bank manager. Kim sat there puzzled, wondering why she needed her manager when he was already sitting right in front of her. Kim sat with the manager of NAR Bank, who smiled warmly as he poured him a cup of tea. "How's the tea?" the manager asked politely. Kim stared at the cup, his tone cold as he replied, "It's cold." The manager awkwardly admitted he forgot to boil the water. Kim raised an eyebrow, curious. "Why did you want to talk to me?" he asked. The manager leaned forward with a friendly smile, explaining that he had better places for Kim to invest his money, suggesting that keeping it in a standard account would be a waste. He offered Kim an investment option with great returns. Kim, slightly confused, directly asked, "Does something like this really need your personal attention?" The manager's smile widened, and he casually remarked that he assumed Kim understood the value of what he was holding. He went on to explain that Yerger's membrane and heart were worth a massive sum based on current rates. Kim blinked in shock when a manager revealed their real value, $230 million. Kim stared blankly, his teacup frozen in his hand as he tried to process the news. Later, Kim was seen happily holding the goblin, excitedly telling it that thanks to it, he had managed to pay off 10% of his debts. He playfully joked with it like it was a little puppy, adding that he didn't find it ugly. But immediately, he took the words back, silently admitting to himself that he couldn't lie like that. As they walked through the city, Kim tried to keep the goblin out of sight, but to his surprise, he couldn't unsummon it. The goblin began screaming loudly, drawing attention from everyone around. People mocked the goblin's bizarre appearance, sarcastically asking who would summon something like that and why it was in a public space. Kim's embarrassment reached new heights when some bystanders mistakenly assumed that he was the goblin, simply because he was standing so close. A deep, burning rage surged within him. He tried to steer the goblin away from the crowd, but it suddenly approached a stranger and began provoking them, drawing even more unwanted attention. At that moment, a large, angry man named Patton appeared, loudly objecting to the sight of a goblin roaming freely through the city. Whispers spread among the crowd, people calling Patton the Destroyer in a mocking tone, despite the fact that he wasn't widely known. Kim's expression changed to one of concern. Someone who called themselves the Destroyer clearly wasn't just some average guy. Panic set in as Kim quickly tried to explain to Patton that the goblin wasn't hostile, but Patton ignored him. Without warning, he launched a powerful attack toward the goblin. In a flash, the goblin countered with lightning speed, launching a devastating counterattack that easily defeated Patton, dealing massive damage. As Patton lay defeated, a system message appeared on Kim's screen, explaining that PK mode had been activated and that pain levels were limited to prevent higher-level players from bullying lower-level ones. The crowd stood in stunned silence, completely horrified by what they had just witnessed. Whispers spread rapidly as people questioned how a small goblin had defeated someone like Patton. Kim's heart raced as he realized the full extent of the danger he was in. If word got out that the deadly goblin belonged to him, his life would spiral out of control. Panic gripped him, and anxiety overtook his every thought. Just as Kim feared, several members of Patton's guild appeared on the scene. Their leader, Hayak, mocked Patton for being defeated by such a small goblin, calling it a disgrace. Then, Hayak turned to Kim, his tone dripping with disdain as he declared that the goblin was just a worthless monster. But still, he insisted that it had to be held accountable for the damage it had caused to their guild. Kim could feel the tension building as the situation rapidly spiraled out of control. While he knew his goblin could easily take them all down, he realized that doing so would bring nothing but trouble. His heart raced, and he quickly tried to intervene, shouting that he'd handle the goblin himself. But the guild members ignored him. Instead, they threatened to kill him if he tried to stop them. Out of options, Kim tried to reason with them, warning that ganging up on a tiny goblin wouldn't end well for them. But before he could say more, the goblin suddenly launched an attack, using the skill rock throw. With terrifying speed, the goblin struck one of the guild members, Miniong, the master of speed, delivering a devastating blow that instantly brought him down. The guild members exploded in rage. Kim could hardly believe how quickly things were escalating. Feeling the weight of the situation, He turned and ran as fast as he could, narrowly escaping the chaos that had unfolded. As he fled, Kim couldn't help but reflect on his earlier hope that life would become easier with such a powerful goblin by his side. Instead, he was filled with regret. He had been overly optimistic, thinking the goblin would make things better, but now everything was falling apart. As Kim ran through the streets, a mysterious old man suddenly appeared in front of him. Urgently, the man called out, telling Kim to follow him and that there was no time to explain. Kim hesitated for only a moment, then decided to follow, desperate for some direction. But to his horror, Kim soon realized that the man had tricked him, leading him straight into an ambush. The old man mockingly told Kim that this was his path to death. Suddenly, a system message appeared, congratulating Kim for his cleverness. It claimed the Goblin Lord was impressed by his cunning in using the enemy's weakness and distraction to his advantage. Kim's blood boiled as he read the message. "Cunning," he shouted in fury. How could the system label him like this? He remembered the Goblin Lord's cruel words, calling him weak and pathetic. Now, the system was calling him cunning. Kim couldn't understand why he was being labeled this way when he hadn't done anything wrong. Bitterly, Kim ranted to himself. It wasn't him who had caused all this trouble, it was the others. They had invited him to their party, betrayed him, and attacked him for no reason. After a deep breath, Kim turned to his goblin, his eyes filled with fiery determination. "I'm tired of being seen as weak," he muttered. "Things are going to change now. I'll take revenge. I'll destroy the Inton Guild." The goblin seemed to perk up at his words, its excitement palpable. Kim could feel a surge of energy, knowing he had a plan in motion. Meanwhile, two guild members were leaping across rooftops, tracking Kim and his goblin. Ji-Hoon turned to her companion, Inuk the Shadow, and asked, "Is it really necessary for you to come with me on such a simple mission? I can handle it on my own." But Inuk warned her not to underestimate the goblin. Even though Patton had been the weakest member of the guild, the goblin had taken him down with a single blow. There was something strange about the goblin's power, and Inuk knew that they couldn't take it lightly. Just as they were speaking, a loud scream echoed from below. Inuk and Ji-Hoon stopped in their tracks, concern flooding their faces. They looked down to see their guild mate, Sungreal the Cunning, being hurled violently from above. Horror gripped Inuk as he realized what was happening. Then, the goblin appeared behind them, sending a chill down Inuk's spine. Before Inuk could react, he attacked the goblin, launching a fierce strike. But to his shock, the attack had no effect. The goblin didn't even flinch. Inuk realized then that this goblin was no illusion. It truly possessed terrifying power. Fear surged through him as he understood that he was in a critical situation, one that could very well cost him his life. Inhuk's desperation was palpable. With a swift, quick strike, he attempted to save himself, but the goblin effortlessly dodged the attack. Fear and disbelief coursed through Inhuk's veins. Never in his wildest dreams did he think he'd encounter a creature capable of avoiding his strike so easily. His confidence crumbled, and his mind raced with confusion. From behind him, Ji-Hoon's furious voice rang out, scolding Inhuk for standing there frozen. She couldn't believe he was letting a mere goblin have the upper hand. Inhuk tried to shake off the panic and calm himself, telling himself it was just a small goblin, but his worry grew. How could such a weak-looking monster deal millions in damage? There had to be some trickery involved. The thought of the goblin's overwhelming strength haunted him, and he knew he had to do something drastic. Then, Inhuk activated a special skill called Absolute Evil, greatly enhancing his power. His body surged with newfound strength, though his speed took a massive hit, dropping by 90%. He could feel the overwhelming force building inside him, ready to strike down the goblin. His irritation flared, and he muttered under his breath, expressing his frustration at the situation. Ji-Hoon, watching in disbelief, couldn't understand why Inhuk would use such a powerful skill on a simple goblin, especially one that drained half of his mana. Inhuk explained that it was likely an auto-triggered skill, a safety measure that had activated due to the dire circumstances. With the skill activated, Inhuk prepared for his final move, Reverse Fist Stance. The stance greatly increased his attack power but reduced his critical hit chances. The situation had reached a critical point, and he knew he had to end it quickly. Frustrated, Ji-hun finally agreed, realizing that they needed to take down the goblin before anyone else saw them in this embarrassing position. She activated her special archer skill, Storm Arrows, which removed all movement-slowing effect from the area. With her frustration mounting, she grumbled about needing to use such a powerful skill just to take down a goblin. The Storm Arrows skill cleared the debuffs from Inhuk, allowing him to charge forward with full speed once again. His fury burned in his eyes as he lunged at the goblin, delivering a fast, powerful strike. But as his fist made contact, a cold wave of disbelief swept over him. The result? 0 damage. His attack had no effect whatsoever. Inhuk froze in shock. 0 damage. Again, he couldn't believe it. Was anything going to work? He wondered. His mind scrambled to find a solution, but before he could think further, the goblin gave a sinister grin, clearly enjoying the chaos it had caused. The sight of that grin sent chills down Inhuk's spine. And then, without warning, the goblin struck. In a terrifying, unexpected move, it launched a devastating surprise attack, dealing massive damage in the millions. The force of the blow sent Inhuk to the ground, and he screamed in agony, his body racked with pain. Ji-hun stood frozen in shock. Her mind couldn't comprehend what she had just witnessed. As she slowly processed the events, Ji-hun began to piece things together. This goblin was no ordinary monster. Her eyes widened in realization. This goblin was something much more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. Kim, watching the scene unfold with a sinister smile, approached her. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "I'm the one who summoned the goblin," he admitted, his voice low and dark. Ji-hun's expression shifted from shock to a mix of confusion and dread. Everything had changed in an instant. She was now facing a far greater threat than she could have ever imagined. As the goblin stood beside Kim, laughing eerily, Ji-hun's shock deepened. How could a mere goblin possess such immense power? After all, Inhyuk, the Shadow, was one of the strongest members of the Everton Guild, and yet here he was, overwhelmed by this creature. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend the impossible. But Kim, now with a truly deranged look on his face, simply dismissed her thoughts with a cold, twisted smile. "It's none of your business," he said with terrifying intensity, his voice carrying an edge of anger. "And right now, I'm beyond pissed." Ji-hun's nerves were on edge, and she felt her heart race. With her voice trembling, she demanded to know what Kim wanted from her. "What have I done to deserve this?" she shouted, her fear giving way to a burst of anger. Kim grinned cruelly, the smile spreading unervingly wide. "It's all your fault," he sneered. "You started this." Her blood ran cold at the sinister words. She screamed, calling him insane, but Kim, realizing how his words had come across, tried to backtrack. His intentions were never to sound like this. No, you've misunderstood," he stammered, his voice shaky. "It's not what you think. You attacked me first. That's why my goblin and I are furious with you." But Ji-hun wasn't calming down. Her panic only escalated, her screams filling the air, and Kim felt the embarrassment sink deep into his gut. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He turned to the goblin, his face turning red from the heat of the awkwardness. "Stop her from screaming," he yelled, hoping the goblin would get the message and keep things from spiraling further. As the commotion continued, several people nearby heard the ruckus and looked around, their curiosity piqued. When their eyes landed on the scene unfolding on the rooftop, one of them shouted, pointing, "It's them, the ones we saw earlier." Kim's heart sank as he realized the crowd below was starting to gather. Panic gripped him, and his mind raced for a solution. He knew they had to leave before the situation got worse. "We need to end this fast," he muttered to the goblin. "Let's get out of here." Panic spread like wildfire among the onlookers. "The goblin destroyed the Everton Guild," one of them shouted. Now it's going to kill the last woman. Are we next? Kim felt his heart race, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. He never meant for things to escalate so out of control. His desperation fueled his voice as he screamed at the goblin to stop. "No, leave her alone," he demanded, his voice filled with fear and urgency. To his surprise, the goblin halted mid-lunge, obeying the command. Ji-Hoon, still paralyzed with fear, could only watch in horror, unable to move. The crowd below, witnessing the spectacle, was in awe of Kim's bravery. Despite looking like a beginner in low-level gear, he had stood up to a goblin that even the Everton Guild had been unable to handle. Their admiration was palpable, and soon they began to cheer for him. "Good luck," one of them shouted. "You can do it. You're going to beat that goblin." Kim was stunned, his mind reeling at the unexpected praise. What? This wasn't the reaction he had expected. Instead of mocking him, they were cheering, treating him like a hero. Confusion and surprise flooded him as the cheers grew louder. They didn't understand what had actually happened. They didn't know that the goblin was summoned by him. Then it hit him. He was being misinterpreted. Kim was left speechless, staring at the jubilant crowd, unsure how to handle the realization. He had come here with vengeance in mind, but now he was caught in a web of misunderstanding. Kim couldn't shake off the image of himself heroically protecting Ji-Hoon from the goblin, a figure of bravery in the eyes of the crowd. He pictured her looking at him with admiration, gratitude shining in her eyes as he commanded the goblin to back off. He imagined himself delivering a dramatic line like, "Your time is up," making him feel like a true hero. The idea of being the fearless savior, risking his life to protect her from the deadly monster, excited him to no end. His twisted imagination took over, and he laughed eerily at the thought. But that excitement grew even more intense when he considered how people would view him now. A true hero who had saved the woman from the goblin. He laughed louder, imagining the applause, the cheers. He could almost hear it. But his thoughts turned quickly as he walked toward Ji-Hoon with a terrifying expression. He needed her to understand who was in control. "Do you want to die in pain, like your comrades?" he sneered, stepping closer. "Swear to remain silent and never tell anyone about me or the goblin, and I'll spare you." Terrified, Ji-Hoon quickly agreed, promising to keep silent. Kim's smile was calm, almost serene, as he confirmed her promise. She wouldn't tell anyone about his connection to the goblin. But in a sudden shift, Kim's demeanor changed, turning into something far more intense. He shouted dramatically at the goblin, accusing it of attacking innocent villagers and causing chaos. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Kim declared, with righteous fury, that he would put an end to the farce. With a flair for the theatrical, Kim activated his skill, Goblin Walk. A chain materialized around the goblin's neck, binding it under his control. Kim dragged the creature forward by the chain, yelling that he wouldn't forgive it. His strength was undeniable, but the goblin's confused expression suggested it didn't understand what was happening. With a powerful motion, Kim slammed the goblin to the ground, continuing to drag it with a growl of confidence. The crowd gasped, stunned by what they were witnessing. Some whispered, awed by the chains of light, a skill capable of restraining monsters. They were astonished that a player in a beginner village had access to such advanced abilities. The praise was immediate, murmurs of admiration spreading through the crowd. Kim's confusion grew as he received a system message informing him that the goblin's mood had improved due to Goblin Walk. Was his skill somehow making the goblin like him? He barely had time to process it before he continued playing the role of the hero. He urged the crowd to back up, warning them that the situation was still dangerous, though he could barely contain the goblin. Ji-Hoon, watching from a distance, came to an eye-opening realization. "I get it now," she murmured. "The Everton Guild couldn't defeat the goblin because your level is above 50. The onlookers gasped in disbelief. They had assumed Everton's failure was due to weakness, but now they understood. It wasn't the guild's fault. It was Kim's overwhelming strength. Kim pretended to struggle with the goblin, but used his skill again to push it away. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he summoned a piece of goblin-specific food with the goblin feeding skill and threw it far away. "This is your end," he shouted, as the goblin darted after the food, moving with lightning speed. The crowd watched in awe as the goblin chased after the food, and Kim seized the moment. He ordered the city gates closed quickly, ensuring the goblin couldn't return. The gates slammed shut just as the goblin exited, and the crowd breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Is it really over?" they asked each other, unsure of the outcome. Kim, exhausted but pleased with his performance, quietly asked, "Are you all okay?" The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping and shouting their thanks. Kim's heart swelled as he realized they truly believed he had saved them, driving away the goblin and protecting them from disaster. As the crowd continued their celebration, Kim couldn't help but smile, relieved. He had almost become known as the lunatic who destroyed an entire guild, but now he was a hero. Ji-hoon approached Kim, her face somber. She told him that all her guild mates had respawned at the Resurrection Temple in Pascal, and she was the only one who knew the full truth about his connection to the goblin. Kim immediately recognized her as the same woman from earlier, and she assured him that she would keep her promise. She wouldn't tell anyone about what had happened. Seeing an opportunity, Kim asked, "Is Pascal really a sacred zone where players have infinite HP and are protected from monsters and other players?" A frightening expression flashed across Kim's face as he suddenly threatened Ji-hoon. If she broke her promise, he warned, he would find a way to kill her repeatedly at the Resurrection Temple, inflicting endless damage. Ji-hoon, terrified, vehemently denied any intention of breaking her word. Her fear was palpable, her scream echoing through the city as the weight of Kim's threat crushed her spirit. Kim, finally feeling a sense of ease, lay down on, reflecting on how all this chaos had spiraled out of control. It never was meant to be like this, he thought to himself. Lying in bed, exhausted but content, Kim basked in the comfort of his new, beautiful room. He couldn't help but feel proud of himself, thinking how great it was that he had been rewarded for his actions. But then, his expression grew serious, and regret washed over him as he remembered someone. Catherine. He had failed to save her, and that thought still haunted him. Suddenly, something important crossed his mind. He had completely forgotten the goblin point he'd received from the Goblin Lord. A panel appeared in front of him, displaying his name and current class. Kim Su, Goblin Summoner. He had 1 goblin point. Kim scoffed. "Will the goblins start calling me their brother if I keep earning these points?" He mused, knowing he had gotten them through trickery rather than genuine strength. Curious, Kim decided to open the Goblin skill shop. But when he tried to access the advanced skills, he found them locked. His eyes scanned the screen, and with a sigh, he selected the only available skill, Goblin Gathering. What did it do? Before he could think further, a terrifying force slammed into his room. The goblin he had summoned earlier burst in, causing chaos as it tore through the space. Kim screamed in panic, realizing that Goblin Gathering was a summoning skill, not a regular one. The goblin's sudden appearance made him anxious, and he feared someone would discover the creature in his room. Frantically, he tried to calm the goblin down, panicking about what to do. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The innkeeper called out, "Are you all right?" Kim, caught off guard, responded awkwardly, "I'm fine. Just leave if you don't want to die." He quickly corrected himself. "Actually, just go away." As the panic intensified, Kim knew that keeping the goblin's presence a secret was his only option. Kim tried to calm the goblin, quickly offering an apology for what had happened earlier. He gently asked it to calm down and drop whatever it was holding. Later that night, Kim sat quietly beside the goblin, venting his frustrations over the day's events. He spoke in a soft tone, expressing how unfair everything felt, that he had been mocked and attacked even though he hadn't done anything wrong. Looking at the goblin with a heavy heart, he said that they were the same. In response, the goblin let out a quiet sound, as if agreeing. Kim continued talking while lying on the bed next to it, muttering that this world was full of bad people. Elsewhere in the city, the doors of a tavern swung open, and a staff member greeted incoming guests. Inside, a few members of the Everton Guild were seated around a table. One of them suddenly pointed toward the entrance and remarked sharply that the person who just entered was the jerk from yesterday. Kim, clearly flustered, shyly admitted it was him. He added that he was the one who saved a member of the Everton Guild, though he felt uneasy being in such a crowded place without his goblin. Inhuck, the harbinger of death from the Everton Guild, fixed his piercing gaze on Kim and said there was no real reason for Kim to help them after what had happened, but thanked him anyway in a chilling tone. The coldness in his voice left Kim terrified, prompting him to beg Inhuck not to thank him with that scary look. Giant, another guild member, told Inhuck there was no need to be so cautious. Kim didn't seem like someone looking for a fight. However, deep down, she knew they were being completely fooled by him, since Kim was hiding the truth about the goblin. Kim confirmed the situation and openly admitted he helped them despite their previous attempt to kill him, because he needed something from them. Inhuck agreed with Kim's honesty, acknowledging that they owed him. He emphasized that the Everton Guild never forgets a favor, and they'd help him however they could. Kim explained that there was no longer any reason for him to stay in the beginner zone. Now that he was past level 30, he wanted to move on to a new region. He asked if they knew how to get there. Inhuck asked if he was referring to a place called Betrayal and mentioned that he might know someone who could help him reach it. Just then, an old man interrupted from across the room, claiming that he knew exactly how to get to Betrayal. He approached Kim quickly and offered a sincere apology for a previous encounter between them. Speaking in a calm tone, the old man explained that after witnessing what Kim had accomplished with just one goblin, it was clear Kim was incredibly strong. Peyton the Destroyer, level 28, chimed in, saying that Kim might even be stronger than they were, which annoyed him a bit. Kim began thinking to himself, clearly denying it in his mind. He knew he wasn't stronger than them. He added silently that if Inhuck had actually followed through and attacked him the day before, he would have died from a single hit. The beginner zone, known as Leaf, consisted of 5 standard dungeons: the grassy area where slimes appeared, the mine dungeon, the dark forest, and others. These were considered open field dungeons, meaning players could enter them anytime. The old man explained that if Kim wanted to leave the Leaf Zone, he would need to clear a raid boss dungeon. This made Kim curiously ask what a raid boss dungeon actually was. The old man clarified that raid dungeons were different from open field ones. They had gates that opened and closed at set times, with limited entry attempts and time constraints. Inhuck added that the raid boss dungeon was the final challenge of every area, and players needed to reach a high enough level before attempting it. He went on to explain that the raid boss dungeon in Leaf only opened once a month, and the reason everyone was gathered now was to prepare for that event. At that moment, Kim realized their presence here wasn't a coincidence. Something big was going on. Inhuck confirmed it, explaining that the dungeon had opened the day before, but everything was ruined because of a certain goblin that suddenly appeared and destroyed everything. Kim was stunned by this revelation. The realization hit him hard. He was now stuck in a Leaf Zone until the raid boss dungeon opened again 1 month later. Furious, he remembered earning over $200,000 from defeating a level 80 monster and thought bitterly about how the goblin he could probably clear even more difficult dungeons. And yet, he was now going to be stuck doing nothing for a whole month. In a fit of rage, Kim grabbed Inhuck by the collar and shouted, demanding to know if there was another way out. He wasn't about to waste his precious time. Inhuck calmly told him there wasn't. Everyone else was angry about the wasted chance, too. He added that, with this, their debt to Kim was settled. The Everton Guild then started preparing to leave. Kim stood in place, looking visibly disappointed and frustrated about the turn of events. As they walked away, Giant glanced back at him with a sympathetic expression before following the others outside. Outside, under the cover of night, the Everton Guild members quietly left the area. Meanwhile, hidden behind a wooden crate, the goblin peeked out, laughing softly to itself. The goblin suddenly lifted its head, sensing something strange. The night sky above them remained clear and calm, but there was an unexpected shift in the air. The raid boss dungeon gate, which had been closed just the day before, suddenly creaked open again. A system message flashed in front of Kim. Raid Boss Dungeon has been opened. The shock rippled through everyone present. The old man, staring at the gate in disbelief, exclaimed that there should have been a 30-day wait before the next raid. Inhuck's eyes narrowed as he stared at the gate, repeating in his mind that the Raid Boss Dungeon was not supposed to open now. Before Kim could process what was happening, another system message appeared before him. Raid Boss Dungeon has reopened. Kim stood frozen in stunned disbelief. The room was filled with murmurs of surprise. Peyton, the Destroyer, shook his head in astonishment. The Raid Boss Dungeon has already reopened? The group stood before the open gate, their faces reflecting shock at the unexpected turn of events. Inhuck turned to the old man, asking how many people were currently inside the dungeon. The old man replied that no one was there at the moment since the team that had been prepared had already completed it yesterday and moved on to the next area. This means we're the only ones here now, Inhuck muttered as he considered their position. Kim's eyes glinted with malicious intent. I knew something felt off, he sneered, looking directly at the guild members. You guys are trying to trick me into falling behind, so you could go ahead. You betrayed me. He was seething, fury rising in his chest. I should have known better than to trust you, he screamed, his voice breaking with frustration. I won't let you enjoy the rewards without me. Jian, visibly startled, quickly tried to deny the accusation. Kim, you're completely misunderstanding the situation. We didn't deceive you. Please, but Inhuck, calm as ever, cut her off. Do you want to join us or not, Kim? He asked, ignoring the tension. Kim's face twisted in anger, but he firmly stated, I'm not letting you go in alone. Inhuck nodded, accepting Kim's response, and prepared to explain the situation. Our intel suggests that the raid dungeon consists of a single room with the boss right at the start. We need to be fully prepared before we go in. It shouldn't be too dangerous, considering our levels are much higher than the dungeons, but we should still exercise caution. Peyton, ever the arrogant one, snorted. We don't need caution. The guild leader isn't even here, and we still have all of Everton's top members. We'll finish this in 10 seconds. Inhuck didn't flinch, his tone as confident as always. Let's get started. With the plan in place, everyone moved toward the gate. Kim turned to the Goblin, which was still hidden behind a crate, and whispered, It'll be a hassle if they find out about you. Stay hidden until I summon you. As he checked his inventory, Kim remembered the past betrayal that still stung, and he swore he wouldn't make the same mistake again. His eyes scanned his items, landing on an advanced healing stone, an item that revived him with 100 HP if he ever reached 0. He was surprised to still have it, considering it should have been used earlier. Doesn't matter now, he muttered under his breath, deciding to push the thought aside. Without another word, he rushed toward the gate, stepping through into the dungeon. The moment Kim crossed into the dungeon, his breath caught in awe. The environment was unlike anything he had seen before. So this is the Raid Boss Dungeon, he said, amazed at the surroundings. Suddenly, a massive steel giant, level 40, appeared before them. The air filled with panic as the team screamed in alarm. This isn't a regular dungeon, one of the members yelled. A clear system message appeared on their screens. Hidden dungeon, Steel Giant's lair. Inhuck turned to the old man, his voice seething with anger. What kind of plan is this? He shouted, demanding an explanation. The old man responded in confusion. I don't know anything about this. Jian's voice quivered with fear as she shouted at Kim. What are you doing? Run to the gate. But Kim, unfazed, smirked sarcastically and retorted. You think I'm going to run from this? Are you all seriously backing out now? He turned his sharp gaze to the team, daring them to retreat. Do you have any idea what kind of rewards this dungeon holds? If you all back down now, I'll take it all for myself. One of the guild members snapped back. Everyone already knows that, but the boss is level 40. A single hit from it could be disastrous, not just a regular kill. It could have serious consequences. Kim grinned, unshaken. The level difference is only 10, he said confidently. At worst, we'll get some serious injuries. But no one's getting permanently wiped out. You think rewards like these come easily? With that, he activated his special Goblin summoner skill. Goblin, come save me, he he shouted, his voice filled with authority. But the goblin, still hidden outside the dungeon, was confused, unable to understand the summoning. Meanwhile, the steel giant roared and charged toward Kim with terrifying speed. Kim screamed in frustration, yelling for the goblin to come out immediately. But the summon wasn't successful in time. The steel giant's massive fist collided with Kim, and in an instant, the force of the blow crushed him, killing him instantly. A system message popped up, announcing Kim's death. His lifeless body lay sprawled on the ground. Peyton looked down at him with mockery, disbelief in his voice as he said, "I can't believe this is the same guy who fought the goblin yesterday, only to go down like this." Inhuck, his face cold and indifferent, dismissed Kim's death with a shrug. "We don't care what happens to him." But his expression shifted when he noticed something unsettling. The gate had suddenly closed behind him. His shock was evident. The old man, his voice grave, explained the situation. "We underestimated this dungeon. It's extremely rare for a hidden dungeon to emerge from a standard raid. This is why we're facing a level 40 steel giant." He paused, then added with a grim tone, "We have no choice but to fight." Meanwhile, Kim's body began to twitch as he woke up with a scream of pain. The shock was overwhelming. "What the hell?" he roared. "I'm over level 30. How did I die in one hit?" His mind raced, but then he froze, realizing with deep disappointment that he had completely forgotten to use his available stat points. 26 points, completely unused, could have made all the difference in that fight. As the realization hit him, regret flooded in. He had also forgotten to summon the goblin before he died. The treasure. It was so close. Kim muttered bitterly, his anger rising. He blamed the goblin for not responding quickly enough, cursing the delay. Just then, the Everton team leader, full of energy, shouted, "Let's attack. Begin the hunt." Kim's jaw dropped in disbelief. He couldn't process what he was hearing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Without missing a beat, Ji-Hune launched her special skill, Wind Arrow. The skill doubled the movement speed of all the team members, setting the stage for their attack. Inhuck, the Shadow, and Minyong, the Speed Master, dashed forward at breakneck speed, preparing to strike the steel giant. The old man quickly gave orders, directing Inhuck and Minyong to lead the charge. "Go first, attack the monster, and try to figure out its weak point." Ji-Hune's speed boost should make it difficult for the monster to counter. Inhuck and Minyong struck with precision, launching their attacks from different angles. The steel giant roared, resisting their blows with surprising strength. The two of them didn't falter, though. They quickly synchronized their movements, executing a joint skill known as Sequential Slash, which consisted of 16 consecutive hits. The old man watched closely, his eyes calculating. "Every monster has a weak point," he said. "If we hit hard enough, we should find it." After the attack, Inhuck turned to Minyong, his expression serious. "Did you find his weak point?" Minyong shook his head, confusion written across his face. "No, the total damage dealt was 0. Inhuck frowned, considering the possibilities. "There are 2 reasons this could have happened," he muttered. "Either its defense is off the charts, or there's something else we're missing." They glanced at the steel giant, which let out a furious roar, confirming that something wasn't right. Before they could process further, Inhuck, his black cloak swirling, leaped forward with a powerful strike using Peerless Blade. The impact shook the ground, but even after this strong attack, the leader was forced to admit, "Our weaker hits are useless." He clenched his fists in frustration. "It has a passive ability called Hatred of the Weak," he explained. "Any attack that deals less than 5% of the monster's total HP is nullified." Peyton, his voice growing louder, shouted at Inhuck, "You're the only one who can deal damage to this level 40 monster. Go all out." But the old man shook his head firmly, replying, "Inhuck isn't the one with the strongest attack here. There's someone else who could do far better, depending on the situation." At that moment, Ji-Hune stepped forward, her expression resolute. She prepared her powerful skill, Final Death Arrow. As she readied herself, she thought to herself, "If the guild knew I had this skill, they want me to be the guild leader." Peyton, overhearing this, was taken aback. "What? "What is that?" he asked, his tone a mix of awe and disbelief. "I don't even know what it does, but I'll buy you enough time to use it, no matter what it costs." He then activated his skill, War Cry, roaring with intensity to draw the monster's attention toward himself. It worked. The monster roared back in rage and focused its attack entirely on Peyton. Meanwhile, Kim, still lying on the ground, watched the events unfold with tension and frustration, calling Peyton an idiot for drawing the monster's attention instead of running. The monster attacked with brutal force and dealt massive damage, but Peyton managed to withstand it without dying. Peyton mocked the monster after the blow, saying he expected it to be stronger, claiming the damage was minor. But the old man shouted at Peyton, warning him not to be careless, stressing that their success depended on not making any mistakes. At that point, the old man used the skill Pain Sharing, which splits incoming damage between him and Peyton. He explained that the one with higher HP would take more of the damage. Kim observed the situation carefully, noticing that their levels were relatively low and that none of them had hidden classes, which only increased his confusion about their true strength. At the same time, the leader of the assassination team declared that their plan relied on the two warriors distracting the monster, while the assassination team would reduce the monster's defense using their passive skills. He explained they had a passive skill called Weak Point Reduction, which decreased the enemy's defense by 2% with a 1% chance per attack, and it could stack up to 5 times. Kim was amazed by their impressive coordination and power. As he watched the battle between them and the monster, he began to wonder to himself if this was the true strength of a powerful, well-organized guild. Kim felt frustrated because he was dead and wouldn't gain any experience or rewards if the monster was defeated by someone else. He feared he might lose everything. At that moment, the monster suddenly focused its attention on Patton again, who was startled and felt uneasy by the monster's terrifying approach. Peyton shouted angrily at the monster, asking why it was looking elsewhere and reminding it that he was the enemy it should be attacking. But the monster slammed the ground with tremendous force, causing a powerful tremor that showed just how strong it truly was. At that moment, Kim stood up, having decided to use the advanced healing stone to revive himself. He sarcastically said he couldn't watch these losers fight anymore, and that he would help them since he had the highest level among them. A system message appeared confirming that the advanced healing stone revives the player with 100 horsepower when their health reaches 0. Kim smirked and said to himself that the hero always arrives late. Suddenly, the system announced that the Steel Giant had chosen Kimchil Su as its target. The Steel Giant used a wide area skill called Surface Destruction, instantly killing many team members. Kim screamed in anger, wishing he had revived earlier. Several team members were thrown back by the sheer force of the attack, severely injured by the impact. Peyton stood stunned as he saw his teammates lying injured around him, then shouted in fury at the monster, demanding to know how it dared hurt his allies. The old man yelled, warning Peyton not to lose focus now. But Peyton ignored the warning and unleashed his powerful skill, Giant Slash, charging at the monster with great force. Despite the strength of the attack, the damage Peyton inflicted was only 3,890 points, demonstrating how powerful and difficult this monster truly was. The old man continues using the skill Pain Distribution to share damage with Patton, but he takes a very heavy hit, 2,456 horsepower, and mutters in pain and regret that his plan didn't work. A system message then appears announcing the deaths of both Peyton the Destroyer and the cunning old man. Kim stands frozen in place, shocked and confused, wondering what he just did. Furious, Kim begins shouting defensively, saying it wasn't his fault, and all he did was simply revive himself. At that moment, Inhuk the Shadow reappears in a battle stance, ready to act. He recalls how monsters usually prefer targeting healers or ranged fighters before heavily armored tanks. Inyuk continues analyzing, pointing out that because of PTON's War Cry skill, which provoked the monster, it focused its attacks on Peyton instead of going after the healers. He concludes that Kim's unexpected resurrection disrupted the monster's target priority, causing it to suddenly refocus and wipe out the entire team before they could react. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, nervously asks In-huk what she should do. Should she release her arrow now or not? Her skill, one-shot death bow, consumes her own HP when used, and her current HP is only at 46%. But In-huk yells angrily, demanding that she not fire the arrow now, explaining that it could ruin their entire plan. He further clarifies that the assassination team's passive skill hasn't reached its full potential yet. It is only stacked 3 out of 5 times, which is not enough to defeat the monster in a single blow. In-huk decides to take responsibility for drawing the monster's attention and instructs Ji-hyun not to cancel her skill under any circumstances. He clearly states that if Ji-hyun fails to land her finishing blow, they will have no chance of victory. Meanwhile, Kim cautiously tries to offer his help to Ji-hyun, hesitantly asking if there's anything he can do to assist. But Ji-hyun responds harshly, mocking him and asking what he could possibly do without his goblin, and tells him to do nothing because he's just a nuisance to them right now. Kim wonders sadly why she looks at him like that. Was it simply because he didn't have his goblin with him now? He then starts blaming the others internally, saying it's their fault he couldn't bring his goblin. With a crazed smile, Kim continues his inner monologue, insisting that they're the real culprits despite being so weak and wondering why they treat him this way, even though they desperately need him. Kim starts remembering his goblins level 999 and sarcastically tells himself that he'll just let them suffer and die on their own. At that moment, the steel giant selects Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, as its next target and charges toward her with incredible speed. In-huk realizes the monster is now focusing on Ji-hyun, just as he predicted since she's the long-range damage dealer. He tries to redirect the monster's attention back to himself, yelling at it that he is the one it should be fighting. He uses a powerful offensive skill called Twin Blade Frenzy, dealing 1,920 damage to the monster. But the monster immediately retaliates with a terrifying roar and an immensely strong attack. In-huk leaps high, barely dodging the strike, and shouts that the battle isn't over yet. He resumes his assault once again, trying to pull the monster's focus back to him. He uses Twin Blade Frenzy again, dealing an additional 1,980 damage. He continues striking quickly and relentlessly, trying to force the monster to view him as the primary threat. He attacks the monster a third time with the same skill, landing another 1,912 damage. Finally, In-huk pauses for a moment, surprised that it took 3 full-powered hits before the monster even started to see him as a real threat. The steel giant continues its terrifying roar, and a message appears confirming that it has selected In-huk, the Shadow, as its target. Another screen shows the monster's current HP, still at 22,460 out of 30,000. In-huk is puzzled that his previous attacks weren't enough despite the 3 stacks of the defense-reducing skill. He realizes that all he can do now is buy time for Ji-hyun. So he taunts the monster, mockingly asking if it's angry yet. In-huk uses a special assassination skill called Rapid Evasion, which allows him to dodge all physical attacks for 3 seconds. He declares that the next 3 seconds belong to him. But at a critical moment, a terrifying message appears before him. He lacks enough mana to activate the skill. In-huk is struck with horror and disbelief. Because of the mana shortage, In-huk takes a direct, powerful hit from the monster, sending him flying as he screams in pain from the massive damage. At that moment, Kim stands in shock as In-huk's body collapses at his feet. A system message appears declaring the death of In-huk, the Shadow. Kim begins screaming hysterically, accusing the team of being stupid and weak. He says he would have been better off staying dead and deeply regrets reviving himself in this situation. But Giona shouts at him in fury, yelling that his revival is what ruined everything and caused the situation to spiral out of control. The two enter into a heated, tense argument. Giona insists that if she had just 10 more seconds, she could have finished it. Kim yells back that he'd rather everyone die than let them take the rewards without him. At that moment, the steel giant lets out another earth-shaking roar. Both Kim and Ji-hyun turn toward the monster, screaming in fear as they realize it has now targeted them. A message confirms that the steel giant has selected Ji-hoon, the bringer of death, as its target and is rapidly closing in on them. Ji-hoon stops arguing and screams that now isn't the time for blame. She decides to fire her arrow immediately, even though it hasn't fully charged, but she notices Kim standing strangely beside her and asks with confusion what he's doing. Kim turns to her with a sinister smile and asks her an ominous question, saying she can't move while charging her arrow, right? Ji-hyun is startled and asks nervously what he's planning to do. She screams in terror, begging Kim not to come near her, but Kim suddenly grabs her and begins running at full speed, shouting that she was the one who said she needed 10 more seconds, while Ji-hyun screams in shock and fear. Kim leaps, dodging the monster's attack at the last second, laughing maniacally as he enjoys the dangerous chase. Giant is stunned by Kim's speed and asks how he could possibly be moving so fast, like Inhuk the Shadow. In his mind, Kim reveals that he allocated all 26 of his unspent stat points into speed, making him exceptionally fast. Fast enough to rival professional assassins. Suddenly, Kim realizes that his earlier argument with Giant earned him an additional Goblin point. He begins to wonder if the Goblin Lord is trying to tell him that he was the one in the wrong. At that moment, Giant shouts that her arrow is ready to fire, and Kim yells at her to shoot now. Giant warns him angrily and nervously that if she misses, it's all over. She begs him not to pressure her. Kim ignores her plea, throws her over his shoulder, and shouts that he wants compensation for all the blood he lost and the expensive healing stone he used earlier. The monster begins spinning around violently, preparing for a devastating area attack. It then unleashes the attack with tremendous force, causing massive destruction across the area. At the critical moment, Ji-hoon finally releases her special skill, One-Shot Death Bow, aiming it directly at the monster. Kim charges forward, carrying Ji-hoon at full speed toward the monster, shouting at the top of his lungs for her to end it. Now, as she prepares to release her decisive arrow, the steel giant lets out a massive roar and uses an incredibly powerful skill called World Destruction Skill. The giant slams the ground with tremendous force, causing debris to scatter everywhere around them. Kim Soo is in utter shock, thinking to himself that the monster had been hiding such a dangerous skill all along. Kim quickly realizes that this attack affects the entire area and remembers that Giant only has 18 HP left while he has 100 HP because he recently revived, meaning both of them would die instantly if hit directly. Ji-hyun tries to aim at the monster but struggles due to the overwhelming amount of flying debris. She anxiously says she can't land a clean shot in these conditions, and Kim replies that he's beginning to see something strange in his mind. At first, Ji-hoon thinks what he's seeing might be a solution to their current predicament. So she asks about his vision, but is quickly shocked when he tells her it's just memories of playing with his friends in the past. Giant sarcastically comments that what he's seeing must be his life flashing before his eyes. Suddenly, something unexpected happens. A strange rift opens in the air, and a sharp, clawed hand reaches out. It's quickly revealed that the hand belongs to Kim's Goblin, who enters the area in a terrifying way, laughing maniacally. Kim begins screaming angrily at the Goblin, yelling that it took far too long to arrive, and saying it felt like a whole week since he used the summoning skill. Giant is utterly shocked by what she's witnessing and thinks to herself that she can't believe what she just saw. She wonders in disbelief if the Goblin actually tore through the fabric of the dungeon itself to enter, thinking such a thing should be completely impossible. Suddenly, Kim excitedly announces that he's using a secret skill called Goblin Shield, a defensive ability. The steel giant roars in fury and looks like it's preparing to launch its final attack. But Kim smirks confidently and mocks the monster, saying, "Those are pretty bold last words for a hidden dungeon boss." Kim and Ji-hyun stand behind the Goblin and declare together that the climax of the battle has finally arrived. Giant finally unleashes her ultimate skill, One-Shot Death Bow, after fully charging it, dealing a massive 22,524 damage to the giant. The powerful strike pierces through the steel giant's body, freezing it in place as cracks begin to spread across it. The steel giant finally collapses to the ground, defeated, and a system message appears telling them they have successfully cleared the hidden dungeon, Steel Giant's chamber. Jian stands in awe and repeats, joyfully and in disbelief, that they actually won, that they managed to clear the hidden dungeon. A system message then appears announcing that Juna's level has increased from 27 to 31. Another message informs Kim that his level has also increased from level 31 to level 34, and he jumped for joy at the achievement. With overwhelming excitement, Kim begins screaming hysterically, demanding to see what reward he earned from clearing the dungeon. A system message appears announcing that all characters who fell during the raid have been revived upon its completion, and the team leader in the black cloak begins asking if everyone is all right. One team member replies that he feels a bit of blood in his mouth, but confirms he's okay. He expresses relief that they defeated the monster, and says that if its level had been just a bit higher, they would have been in serious danger. Suddenly, someone says with concern that Xiongl isn't breathing, but another member sarcastically replies that if they smack him hard enough, he'll wake up. The Black Cloak leader looks sternly at Kim and Ji Hoon-ae and asks if they can explain exactly what just happened. But Kim at this moment is acting very strange, hugging all the loot that dropped from the monster and screaming hysterically, begging everyone not to come near him. Ji Hoon-ae looks at the leader and hesitantly says that she doesn't know how to explain what's going on with Kim right now. But the system message that appears before him shocks him. It states that he hasn't fulfilled the conditions to unlock a hidden class yet. Ji-hun is also disappointed when a similar message informs her that she too hasn't met the requirements for a hidden class. She wonders in confusion if clearing a hidden dungeon isn't enough to obtain a hidden class. At the same time, Kim reflects deeply and concludes that just like he received the Goblin class due to the Goblin Lord's favor, there must be other conditions that need to be met inside the hidden dungeon itself to qualify for a hidden class. Kim also realizes that it would have made more sense to obtain the hidden class before defeating the dungeon boss, but he stops thinking about it and decides there's no point in overthinking it now. He starts screaming again, shouting that he has to collect the monster's loot before it's too late. Ji-hun quickly yells at him to stop, saying that even though they were the ones who landed the final blow, everyone contributed to the battle and the loot should be shared after consulting the group. But Kim keeps screaming wildly and refuses to listen, hugging the rewards even tighter. The leader and another member stand beside Ji Hoon-ae, watching Kim with surprise and mockery, wondering aloud if he's turning into Gollum because of his obsession with the loot. Kim shouts back defensively that the loot is precious to him. The leader calmly tells Kim that despite helping them twice, they've achieved their primary goal and don't intend to be greedy about the extra loot. This surprises Kim, who wasn't expecting such nobility. Suddenly, the old man approaches Kim and smacks him hard on the head, then sternly says he told Inyek, the shadow, from the start that they shouldn't have caused all this trouble. Kim becomes furious and starts yelling angrily at the old man and the team members, accusing them of betraying him not once but twice. But the team leader replies calmly yet firmly, saying that removing Kim right now wouldn't be difficult, and if they wanted to use force, they already would have. Then the leader points to Kim and tells him that he can keep all the loot. But he points specifically to the bow Kim picked up and informs him that it's a unique item, the Iron Giant's bow, and asks if Kim realizes how valuable it is. Kim is thrown into panic and nervously yells, asking what that means, especially since he's not an archer and doesn't know how to use it. Kim internally realizes that this is a unique item that can't be sold or used unless the player belongs to a specific class, Archer. But Kim shouts stubbornly, declaring that he still wants to keep it, arguing that everyone else has unique items except for him. One member snaps angrily, telling Kim to stop being greedy and hand the bow over to Ji-hyun, the bringer of death. But Kim gives a cunning smile and agrees to give up the bow, only if he gets something in return. The leader is stunned and says in disbelief that this item cannot be traded or sold, which makes it incredibly valuable. But Kim laughs maniacally and mockingly tells them that in the end, they'll have to buy the item from him, or they'll never get it. Kim laughs loudly and maniacally with his goblin, while one of the guild members watches in disgust, thinking to himself that Kim really does resemble that goblin they encountered earlier. At the same time, Kim's goblin is seen hiding cautiously behind some rocks, looking nervous due to Kim's current cooperation with the Everton team, and lets out a small, anxious sound. Ji Hyun, the bringer of death, holds the new unique bow that Kim gave her and comments that it's very heavy. Kim sarcastically thanks the Everton team for the exchange, and the team leader in the black cloak replies that he's been thinking about this for a while, that Kim has a special talent for making people hate him. The black cloak leader asks Kim where he plans to go after this, and Kim quickly and confidently answers, "Isn't it obvious?" Kim follows up with a wicked smile, saying that he's going somewhere they aren't. The leader comments that Kim is a truly twisted man. The team leader, agreeing with Kim's plan, calls it a good idea and asks if everyone is ready to leave. As they head out, Jian casts a glance at Kim, a look filled with curiosity and interest. Kim and his goblin stand confidently, preparing to leave as well. A system message confirms that the hidden raid dungeon has been successfully completed. Kim reflects on the situation. While losing the unique bow was unfortunate, the thief's glove he received as a consumable item is incredibly useful. It grants him the ability to steal one item from a character lower level than him. But Kim realizes the true prize is the high-purity steel he obtained. Aware that he was once a mining-focused player, he laughs joyfully and thinks to himself that, while everyone was obsessed with the unique weapon, none of them noticed the true value of the rare metal. The following day, Kim arrives in Fjornale, a city located in the Phoenix Market area. Surrounded by high-level players dressed in extravagant gear, he can't help but feel awe and admiration. He wonders aloud how much money these players must be making from the game. Then, in a strange outburst, Kim announces that he can smell the scent of money in the air. However, his excitement quickly fades as he realizes that before he can start making money, he needs to upgrade his gear. The shocking reminder of how easily he died from a single hit by a monster 9 levels below him hits him hard. Kim realizes the reason for his defeat. He's still wearing his old, worn-out armor from when he was level 3. He's stunned to find that the armor even gives him negative defense stats. Suddenly, the goblin screams loudly to grab Kim's attention. Kim turns to the goblin, warning it in frustration that if it causes any trouble in the village, he'll be seriously angry. But just as he finishes speaking, a massive monster appears in front of them, causing Kim to scream in terror. "A monster!" he yells, bewildered. He demands to know why a boss-level monster would be in a place like this, and orders the goblin to protect him immediately. Before Kim can react further, he hears a calm, surprised voice. "I've never seen anyone use a goblin as a summoned creature before." Kim turns to find a beautiful and powerful-looking woman named Irene lounging atop the monster. She asks Kim if the goblin is truly his summoned creature. Kim, stunned, realizes someone is riding the monster and wonders if it means the monster is a summoned beast under another player's control. Irene calmly explains that Michelle, the monster, is very obedient within the village, but Kim's anxiety grows. He shouts that the monster is drooling heavily while eyeing him. Kim glances at Irene and immediately senses how strong she is. He thinks to himself that he doesn't need to fight her to know her power. She's so formidable that even guilds like Everton wouldn't stand a chance against her. Irene approaches Kim gently and asks, "Sweet little one, would you grant me the honor of knowing your name?" Kim hesitates, but finally replies, "Kim Chil-Su." The woman smiles softly, then tells him, "I wasn't talking to you," and points to the goblin, which is still screaming excitedly. Surprised, asks if the goblin has a name and whether he hasn't named it yet. Irritated, Kim responds that it's not important. Who would even think of naming a summon monster? He adds in disbelief, "You just called that ugly goblin cute?" Irene smiles calmly and replies, "One-sided relationships are usually unstable." She advises Kim to take a good look at his goblin from atop the monster she's riding. Irene continued, explaining that the goblin had immediately taken a defensive stance for Kim the moment it heard the command to protect him. Despite not even being given a name, this act showed just how loyal the goblin was. She looked at Kim again with a soft gaze and told him she hoped he wouldn't be too boring the next time they met. She then bid him farewell by name, Kim Ch-soo, and instructed her monster, Michelle, to move. Kim, still sarcastic, shouted after her, "Thanks so much for the advice," and added loudly, "I don't need your advice at all. My goblin and I don't have problems with each other." He then commanded the goblin to move. Later, while browsing a gear shop, Kim was met with a harsh stare from the shopkeeper, who criticized his outfit. The shopkeeper, an NPC named Humphrey the Sharp-Tongued, told Kim that his clothes were literal trash, and that wearing actual garbage would be an improvement. Flustered, Kim tried to defend himself, saying that was exactly why he came to buy better gear. Humphrey, mocking him, showed him a sturdy piece of metal armor and sarcastically declared it perfect for someone like him. Kim was shocked when he saw that the armor cost 350 gold, about 40 real-world dollars. As he thought deeply, Kim realized that even with a top-tier summon creature, if he died, he'd lose instantly. So, decent defense was a must. He decided to buy the armor. Humphrey acknowledged that Kim at least had good taste in gear, telling him to use it well since it had been crafted especially for idiots like him, using top-quality steel. Kim muttered himself that this guy really lived up to his name. Kim eagerly put on the new armor, feeling incredibly happy. "Oh, this armor is really nice," he said. But moments later, he screamed in frustration and rage when he realized he couldn't move at all due to the armor's weight. Humphrey, casually telling him that people like him shouldn't be moving in the first place, watched Kim struggle. Kim realized the problem. He had invested all his stat points into agility during his fight with the steel giant. Now, with this heavy armor, he couldn't move. He needed to sell it immediately. Humphrey offered to buy it back for just 30 gold and mocked the armor as garbage, which only made Kim shout in anger, furious that he was being ripped off by an NPC. Suddenly, Kim noticed a golden exclamation mark above Humphrey's head. Confused, he asked about it. Humphrey began looking around in a panic, saying he couldn't find anything. Then, he discovered that his special blacksmith hammer was missing and screamed in frustration, saying he couldn't craft anything without it. Kim, unfazed, coldly told Humphrey that he had plenty of other hammers, but Humphrey insisted that this hammer was different, that he needed it back right away. Humphrey explained that the hammer was located in the underground waterway dungeon near the village entrance and firmly asked him to go retrieve it for him. A message appeared in front of Kim, notifying him that he had received the quest, Humphrey's Problem, with the reward being the ability to refine materials to craft armor. Kim suddenly realized why the materials he obtained from the hidden monster were so valuable. They could be turned into high-tier equipment. He grinned wickedly, accepted the quest, and confidently repeated the dungeon's name, Underground Waterway. Standing at the dungeon entrance, Kim declared that he didn't need to worry about anyone else. "Other party members will only slow me down," he said with an even bigger smile. "I'll finish this easy dungeon in under 30 minutes. But a system message soon appeared, announcing a quest condition. Kim stood stunned, confused by the strange requirement. He was shocked to see Humphrey behind him, yelling in frustration and urgently demanding that he retrieve his hammer immediately. The message clarified that the quest would fail if Humphrey died. Kim screamed in confusion and annoyance, asking, "Why is this NPC following me into the dungeon?" As our protagonist, Kim, approached the cave, he noticed a blacksmith standing right in front of it. The man was holding a hammer in each hand and staring directly at him. Kim blinked in confusion, trying to make sense of a notification he'd received earlier. His thoughts raced, and the worry showed clearly on his face. If he dies, the quest fails. May have to drag around a level 13 tumor. Unexpected variable. But then, out of nowhere, the blacksmith suddenly shouted at him, his voice booming. "Why are you just standing there staring? Hurry up and move." Kim didn't answer. A nervous sweat rolled down his face as he silently calculated his next move. In his mind, he thought, no need to keep pace with him. He decided to outmaneuver the blacksmith, to finish the job before the guy could even get up. That way, he wouldn't have to bother protecting him. I'm maxed out agility, so I'm pretty fast. I'll just ignore the trash mobs and rush the boss. Smiling with excitement, Kim dashed into the cave and muttered under his breath, "Ah, I was just about to leave." As he ran deeper into the cave, he kept thinking to himself, I know all about this kind of quest. NPCs are weird. They follow players but stop as soon as they're too far. He planned to take advantage of that, just leave the blacksmith behind. But before he could finish that thought, Kim suddenly froze mid-run. His eyes widened in shock at the sight ahead. At that exact moment, a notification popped up. In front of him, the blacksmith was already deep in battle, surrounded by a pack of wolf monsters. They were all lunging at him, and his health bar was dropping fast. But even while being swarmed, the blacksmith shouted with pride, "Humph! You dare challenge me, Humphrey the Great?" The scene was ridiculous. His words didn't match his desperate situation at all. Kim yelled back at him in frustration, "No, you dumb NPC. Stop fighting and stay back." Panicking at how close he was to failing, Kim shouted toward his companion, "Goblin!" In an instant, Dark Goblin shot forward like a blur. His speed was unreal. Every attack he landed dealt a whopping 9999999 damage, instantly wiping out the monsters one after another. When the last monster fell, Dark Goblin swung his hammer with a flourish, flicking the blood off. He turned toward Kim with his ugly smile and said, "Kisha Shishi." Kim had no idea what it meant, but it sent a chill down his spine. The blacksmith, still full of himself, declared, "As expected, you're no match for the mighty Humphrey." He acted like he hadn't just been seconds from death. From behind, Kim made a twisted, angry face and grumbled, "Gizlu, bull brggh." But suddenly, the blacksmith's eyes shifted. He had noticed something far off in the distance. He tensed, clearly sensing a presence, and shouted, "You over there?" Without another word, he sprinted off toward the source, leaving Kim behind in the dust. Watching him disappear, Kim clenched his teeth and muttered bitterly in his mind, "Should I just kill him? Seriously." Even as the quest continued, that thought lingered. Then, our protagonist Kim narrowed his eyes and stared intensely at the blacksmith in the distance. Thoughts swirled in his head. This is a pain. Charging in like that without knowing he could die. Have the goblin guard him while I run to the boss. No. If I call the goblin back to me at the wrong time and he dies, it's over. Realizing there was no easy way out of this growing problem, Kim clenched his fist. His mind cleared, and with confidence, he thought, there's only one way. Turning to his companion, he called out boldly, "Goblin, we're changing strategy. From now on, wipe out every trash mob along the way." And as soon as he heard those words, the goblin burst into laughter like a total maniac. Keek. Meanwhile, deeper inside the kid dungeon, the blacksmith stood tall, his hammer in each hand, facing off against a horde of rat monsters. His eyes were wild as he growled, "These filthy bastards. Not only did they claim Phoenix El Barsa's territory, they even stole my hammer." With a furious roar, he leaped forward to attack, shouting, "I'll wipe them all out." But just before he could even land a single hit, Dark Goblin appeared like a blur, his face twisted into that same ugly grin, his long nose leading the way. He effortlessly slaughtered the monsters before the blacksmith could even swing. Still, the blacksmith kept charging in, blindly attacking empty air as if it were full of enemies. He bellowed, "Take my ultimate technique." In front of him, the goblin continued his rampage, killing every rat with max-level speed and overwhelming force. Back a little, Kim stood with his hands on his waist, grinning confidently. "All right, it's been a while since I've gone all out." "All right." He took a breath and nodded. "It'll take more time than expected, but it's definitely safer to clear everything on the way. That damn old man won't die either this way." But then, the blacksmith started to realize something. His eyes darted around. He hadn't killed a single monster. Frustrated, he turned and saw Kim glowing with confidence, a soft golden aura radiating from his body. The blacksmith clenched his jaw and shouted, "These bastards, are they seriously ignoring me?" Kim tried to calm him gently, his voice soft. "No, they're not ignoring me." But the blacksmith seemed to pick up something in Kim's tone. His eyes lit up with rage, and he roared, "Before I'm a blacksmith." His whole body shook with fury as he finished. "I was a proud warrior." And right then, his rage boiled over. A burst of energy surged from him. Warcry skill activated, a loud system notification popped up in front of Kim. Seeing that, Kim immediately lost his cool. "You bull-headed bastard." Far deeper inside the dungeon, skeletons that had been resting in silence suddenly jolted awake from the skill's effect. One of them opened its jaw wide and let out a terrifying scream. Cool. In no time, undead skeleton soldiers appear before Kim and the group, swords in hand, eyes glowing. These weren't weaklings. Their levels were above 30. But strangely, the blacksmith stood right at the front, ready to face them all. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he said, "Did even ancient spirits awaken from my shout? Now, this is finally getting interesting." Kim could hardly believe it. He glared at him and replied, "So what you're saying is that skill just now woke up monsters that wouldn't have attacked if we just walked past?" Frustration exploded from within Kim. His voice was sharp and loud. "You're telling me we're supposed to clear a quest like this now? I'm very pissed off right now. This better be your last trolling stunt, right?" "Keek!" Dark Goblin cackled wildly, picked up a nearby stone, and gripped it tightly in his hand. Then, with a powerful toss, he hurled it at the skeleton soldiers. The stone landed with a massive impact, instantly killing them all. But even after that impressive display, Kim's irritation didn't fade. He muttered coldly, "If you mess with me again like this, I'll kill everything, quest or not." Time passed. 3 exhausting hours later, our protagonist was staggering through the dungeon with his companions. His face dripped with sweat, completely out of stamina. Kim Kiolsu had now reached level 37, but with that came a price. His face, already far from handsome, had somehow become even uglier. Every step he took, he leaned against the rough stone walls of the dungeon for support, thinking bitterly to himself, "This insane bastard. He just won't stop trolling." Bringing him along makes this feel like hard difficulty dungeon mode. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the blacksmith spoke up. "I'm still Humphrey." But just then, click. Unknowingly, Kim stepped on something. A sharp noise echoed through the corridor. Startled, he looked down. What was that sound? Behind him, the blacksmith's eyes widened in panic. He screamed out, "Dodge it! It's a trap!" A golden flash erupted from the side of the room. In an instant, 3 glowing arrows launched through the air, headed straight for Kim. Without hesitation, Kim grabbed his overpowered goblin and yanked him up like a living shield, yelling as if casting a powerful skill. The arrows slammed into the goblin's tough frame, splintering and scattering across the ground. The danger passed. Kim stood there trembling slightly, sweat rolling down his face as he exhaled. That startled me. Why did a trap suddenly activate? I didn't even do anything. Then he glanced at the floor and spotted the skeletal head he had unknowingly stepped on. That was the trigger. Just as he started to calm down, his heart skipped. He turned his head and saw the blacksmith. An arrow had pierced directly into his chest. Blood was dripping slowly from the wound and from the corner of his mouth. The blacksmith gritted his teeth, staring ahead with a grimace. "Guh, you cowards. That garbage ditched me to save himself." Hearing those words, Kim's face tightened. He clenched his teeth, his body shaking with frustration. Then, a system notification blinked in front of him. He watched helplessly as Humphrey's health dropped, second by second, until it finally hit 0. A final notification appeared. The silence that followed was broken by a sudden, wild scream. Kim snapped. He charged out of the dungeon like a deranged beast and stormed into town, shouting at the top of his lungs, "I'm gonna kill him again! You crazy f***ing blacksmith! You're already dead, but I'll kill you anyway." As Kim tore through the city streets, a mysterious figure watched him from above, quiet, still, and intense. Eyes narrowed like blades, the man stared down at Kim and muttered in a low, threatening tone, "Finally found you." His gaze sharpened even further as he spoke the name. Scheme Kool-Soo. When the protagonist finally arrived at the blacksmith shop, he skidded to a dramatic stop, just like a hero from the movies, and shouted the blacksmith's name. Humphrey, the blacksmith, noticed him standing outside the shop and immediately reacted to the gear he was wearing with a sharp, critical glare. With a mix of shock and annoyance, he insulted the protagonist harshly. In response, the protagonist smiled devilishly, holding up the goblin in his hand like a toy, and replied with mocking confidence. But surprisingly, instead of continuing the argument, Humphrey abruptly changed the topic and thanked him for retrieving his hammer, as if he hadn't just insulted him seconds before. The protagonist, baffled by the sudden shift, reacted loudly in disbelief. At that moment, a system notification appeared in front of him, confirming the quest was complete and that Humphrey's forging hammer had been successfully returned. It also unlocked the ability for him to craft equipment using materials. Seeing the message, the protagonist looked confused, questioning how the hammer had already dropped. Humphrey, still as blunt as ever, explained that it had dropped right after they killed the rat. Hearing this, the protagonist erupted in anger, demanding to know why this information was being revealed only now. But Humphrey, unbothered, just repeated that the protagonist was trash, like always. Later inside the shop, Humphrey worked on the armor without even glancing at the protagonist. He explained that the quality of equipment was influenced by the blacksmith's sweat. As he hammered away, he instructed the protagonist to watch carefully, stating that high-quality materials in the hands of a skilled blacksmith are reborn into something greater. Once he finished, he stepped back, arms crossed, and declared that a fine piece of gear had been forged, then insulted the protagonist again, claiming it was wasted on someone like him. The protagonist looked at Humphrey's calm expression and pointed out that he hadn't even broken a sweat, questioning the earlier claim about sweat being important. Humphrey, dead serious, responded that's exactly why the quality was low. When the protagonist put on the armor, he looked at his hands, eyes wide with excitement, a bead of sweat sliding down his face. In his mind, he was overwhelmed by the thought that this was his very first rare armor, rarer even than loot from a hidden dungeon, and crafted from materials dropped by a hidden boss raid. As he admired the armor, players started gathering around him, clearly in awe, though he didn't even notice. He was too busy marveling at the armor. A system panel appeared, listing the item's stats: rare blue steel light armor, with level and agility requirements, and a chance to activate skill. Just then, Humphrey reappeared and told the protagonist he wouldn't be taking money for this one, adding that he didn't want any disgusting gratitude. The protagonist, without missing a beat, retorted that he hadn't planned to pay anyway. Suddenly, a system notification popped up. PK mode had been activated. Though the protagonist hadn't done anything, his instincts kicked in and he immediately sensed danger. A sharp blade suddenly appeared from behind him. He dodged just in time, turning to see the same man who had been watching him run through the city earlier. Seeing that the attack had failed, the man paused. The protagonist, still trying to process what had just happened, questioned the sudden aggression. The man, with a confident air, acknowledged the dodge and accused the protagonist of being strong enough to have left a certain young woman half dead. A crowd started to gather as the man's accusations drew more attention. In a panic, the protagonist muttered to himself about his agility stat before snapping out of it and loudly questioning what was going on and who this young lady even was. The man ignored his confusion, calling out the protagonist's name and stating that he was the last person the young lady had partied with. Without finishing his sentence, he accused the protagonist again, this time more forcefully, of pretending not to know someone named Catherine, while launching another attack. The protagonist dodged again, now holding his head in confusion as he tried to recall who Catherine was. Then it hit him. He remembered the moment he met the girl who had tricked him into joining her party, only to betray him inside a hidden dungeon. Snapping back to the present, the protagonist shouted in frustration, insisting that he was actually the victim, that she had betrayed and backstabbed him first. But the man's expression darkened. He coldly reminded the protagonist that while he was alive and well, the young lady in question had ended up in a vegetative state. The accusation hit hard. The protagonist's eyes widened in shock, sweat rolling down his face, mouth agape, and with a trembling voice, he asked if she had really become a vegetable. As the protagonist stood frozen in place, the man's accusations rang in his ears. His mind suddenly flashed back to the moment at the shrine when Catherine had been attacked by the boss monster. He remembered vividly how the monstrous Gauger had slammed its massive foot down on her. The image burned into his memory. In that instant, a horrifying thought struck him. Was it because of the damage she took from Gauger? He had known the shock of that attack would be devastating, but for her to end up in a coma, because of him? No, he couldn't accept that. Trying to justify himself, the protagonist shouted back at the man, panic written all over his face, sweat pouring down. He insisted it was Gauger's fault. He hadn't done anything wrong. He tried to explain, but the words caught in his throat. The man, however, wasn't interested in hearing explanations. His expression was cold and resolute as he stepped forward with deadly intent. He declared that it wasn't up to the protagonist to decide whether he was at fault. What mattered was what had happened to her, and now, because of it, the heir to the Desmyung group was in jeopardy. Without waiting for a response, the man thrust his sword straight toward the protagonist. But then, something unexpected happened. The blow connected, yet it didn't do any damage. The man froze, his mind reeling. No damage? That's when it hit him. The protagonist hadn't taken any damage at all because he was protected by the overpowered Goblin shield. And standing there with a smug grin, the protagonist revealed the secret. With his shield held high and the two hideous Goblin faces on it snickering in sync, he laughed and mocked the man. Why hadn't they just started with this from the beginning? The chairman's daughter from the Semyung group was unwell. So what? Both Goblin faces laughed together like classic villains. Oh, but let's not forget, his name is Lloyd. So, how many of you know about Lloyd? Let me know in the comments. As the man finished explaining the full situation, the weight of it all sank in. The protagonist began calculating everything in his head. Thoughts raced. He remembered why he kept pushing forward even though working on Manoas was hard. The message from demonic scans echoed in his mind. Please, if you like our work, consider donating here. Then the name hit him like a truck, Desmyung Group. Cars, phones, semiconductors, and soon, more. A massive conglomerate known not just in Korea, but all around the world. Just getting a job, there was considered a major life achievement. And now here he was, sitting in a hospital room, staring at the unconscious daughter of that conglomerate's chairman. Her body lay still on the bed, an oxygen mask strapped to her face. He couldn't believe it. She had collapsed while running a party with him, and now she was lying there like that. Because of a game, the man across from him finally broke the silence. He questioned the protagonist directly, asking whether the young lady was really attacked by a level 80 monster in a hidden dungeon. Nervous, the protagonist stammered. Sweat rolled down his face as he struggled to answer. He muttered a clumsy explanation, saying yes, probably. Maybe it was the trauma of total incapacitation. That's what she must have gone through. But the man wasn't convinced. He leaned in, voice sharp, demanding to know how the protagonist managed to escape, especially when he had only been level 3 at the time. Meanwhile, the girl, who was close to level 40, ended up like this. How was it that he came out unscathed? Panicked, the protagonist blurted out more excuses. He claimed he'd changed to a hidden class and barely escaped. Said it was just luck. Then, in a moment of guilt, he admitted she should have been the one to get the class, not him. Looking down at the girl again, he thought to himself that the doctors had done everything they could. They'd given her the utmost care, but she still wouldn't wake up. If it were him in her place, he knew he'd be long dead. The man's expression darkened. He repeated the impossible scenario, how a level 3 player had gotten a hidden class and escaped from a level 80 monster. That wasn't some miracle cure, he pointed out. The protagonist could only laugh awkwardly, rubbing the back of his head. Then, as if grasping at something, he asked carefully, was there barely any chance she'd recover? But the man shot back sharply, warning him to watch his mouth. She wasn't dead, just unconscious. He explained that even the best doctors had said the same thing. They didn't know why she wouldn't wake up. For now, there was nothing more they could do. Hearing that, the protagonist's expression fell. He looked at her and muttered, so they were just supposed to sit and wait for her to wake up? Then, almost hesitantly, he pointed out that since the injury happened inside the game. The man turned and looked at him intensely, not saying a word. Still, the protagonist pushed on. What if they tried to heal her through the game? The man adjusted his glasses and told him to continue. So, the protagonist began explaining further, making a thoughtful pose and holding his chin. He claimed to have read an article once, something from the US, about a person who had lost consciousness and was about to be given up on by their family, but they regained consciousness while logged into Heaven's Gate. Something like that. But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. He said aloud it was a long shot like a 1 in 9. 9 million chance, and laughed it off. But inside, he admitted to himself, I'm lying to these desperate people right now. Then, with a shift in his tone, he put on a serious expression. He gently took the man's hand and, feigning concern, said with gravity, but instead of just sitting here doing nothing, shouldn't you at least try grabbing at straws? Because deep down, the protagonist thought bitterly, they lied to me too. And even though our protagonist's concerned expression was fake, he didn't realize just how convincing it looked. The man stared at him in silence for a moment, seemingly contemplating something deeply. Then the scene shifted. Next day, inside the game. The girl's avatar appeared, but her expression was completely blank. Her eyes were dull, her body unmoving like a lifeless puppet. She didn't say a word. A nearby goblin looked at her and got excited, his tongue sticking out as he started laughing like a pervert. Meanwhile, our protagonist stood frozen, panic washing over him. His eyes widened with a mix of shock and disbelief as he exclaimed, the chairman actually gave permission. They actually let her log in while unconscious. Then gritting his teeth and clutching his chin, he thought, these people must really be desperate. Still, as the weight of the situation sank in, a darker thought crept in his head. If they find out I lied to Dee's Myung group, I'll disappear without a trace. He began circling around the girl who stood silently in the middle of the city. His thoughts churned faster. Recovering lost consciousness through a game? That's bullshit. I've never heard of such a thing. But suddenly, a wicked grin formed across his face. At the very least, I'll be remembered as someone who tried to save her. And then, jumping up in the air like a lunatic in the middle of the town square, he shouted to himself, that big corporation, to save the #1 heir that everyone gave up on, could they really ignore someone who tried this hard? The goblin kept laughing behind him, unfazed, but our protagonist didn't care at all. He was fully immersed in the fantasy he was building for himself. If I get lucky and she actually wakes up, jackpot. Even if it doesn't work, I've got nothing to lose. He then stepped close to the girl and stared at her blank expression intensely. Gently, he held her chin with one hand and muttered with a mock serious tone, I pretend to be trying to save her for a while. Then mimicking a crying voice, he wailed dramatically that they should prepare for the worst. After that fake act, he hugged himself like a mad genius, spinning in place while laughing. Am I a genius or what? After calming down a little, he looked at her again and sighed. So anyway, I'll have to bring her around for a while. But how the hell do I drag around someone who can't walk? His eyes landed on the goblin. Taking a deep breath, he finally said, that's it. The goblin tilted his head and looked up at him curiously. Then, a short while later, the girl's avatar was seen walking stiffly behind our protagonist, being dragged along by a rope tied around her waist like a slave. The goblin, holding the robe, snickered gleefully. Our protagonist confirmed his theory. As expected, if I pull her physically, the system makes her follow. This will do. So, with him leading in front and the goblin dragging her from behind, the girl now followed like an obedient puppet. But soon, he began to notice the stairs. Whispers surrounded them. His expression twisted awkwardly, sweat forming on his face. Is this really okay? Townspeople nearby started murmuring to each other. Oh my, look at that. He's making a goblin drag a female player around. He's the absolute worst. I hope he dies. He was stunned. His face contorted in disbelief as he screamed in his thoughts. It's absolutely not okay. Panicking, he quickly tried to defend himself. I swear I'm close with this, but a girl scoffed and replied coldly, treating someone you're close with like that. Then a guy next to her chimed in, if I get close to you, are you going to hit me too? His mind shattered in real time. Eyes wide, mouth agape, he whispered, what? Then completely panicking, his inner monologue went wild. This is bad. I'm completely cornered. This is no different from the last town. And just like that, right on cue, a voice shouted from a distance. This way. Our protagonist turned his head, and there he was, the old man, appearing once again like some kind of weird savior. Our protagonist squinted. You, pointing toward the back of a building, the old man urged, no time to explain. Come on, this way. But this time our protagonist didn't immediately obey. Instead, he crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow with a cocky smirk. Explain. Unless you want to die. Didn't expect to run into you again. As they continued walking through the area, Scheme suddenly halted. With suspicion in his eyes, he turned toward the old man beside him and addressed him directly, calling him by a known nickname. The old man, unfazed by the insult, confirmed his identity with a calm demeanor. Scheme immediately linked the goblin from earlier to the old man, confirming his suspicion about it being a summoned creature. Ignoring any attempt from Sungryul to explain further, Scheme went straight to questioning his motives. He acknowledged the old man's assistance, but made it clear that he didn't trust him or his guild. He directly asked what the Evaton Guild was scheming this time. Sungryul leaned against the wall, clearly annoyed by the assumption. He explained that the guild had only assembled for a raid and that they didn't stay together consistently. Scheme didn't press the point further and brushed off the topic altogether. Meanwhile, the goblin, who had been dragging the unconscious girl by her robe, looked towards Sungryul with a faint smile. Scheme turned back to the old man and questioned whether he acted as a scout for the Evaton Guild. He asked for information about the region, admitting he was still unfamiliar with it. Sungryul, considering the request, suggested they move to a different location before beginning his explanation. He then walked ahead, passing through a laser-guarded pathway and gesturing for Scheme to follow. Sometime later, a system notification appeared in front of Scheme, stating that player kill mode had been activated. In the aftermath, Scheme stood with his hand bloodied, while the old man lay injured on the ground, his body scarred and battered. Despite his condition, Sungryul began explaining what little he knew about the Pyarndal region. He revealed that boss raids in this area didn't follow the usual monthly schedule. Like in the game Rev, instead, they required specific conditions to be met. He then questioned Scheme's obsession with dungeons, noting his intense behavior whenever a dungeon clear was delayed. Scheme, sweating from anxiety, stammered out a reason, claiming it was all about money, since tougher dungeons paid more. Internally, however, he kept the real reason to himself. He was exploiting a bug for profit. Despite the tension, Sungryul offered some genuine advice. He emphasized that progression should follow a certain order and reminded Scheme that he had only just entered the Pyarndal region. He recommended starting in Phoenix El Baysar, a royal city where the game's main quest line could be taken on, and where even high-level players frequently traveled. Hearing this, Scheme became instantly ecstatic. He shouted in excitement, finally realizing the importance of the main quest. In a frenzy, he grabbed Sungryul by the collar and shook him, berating himself for not thinking of it earlier. Then, energized by the revelation, he turned and declared that they were heading out, ready to go, with the goblins. But something was wrong. He quickly noticed the girl was missing. Confused, he looked toward the goblin, stunned in his silence. In a moment of desperation, he asked about her whereabouts. Meanwhile, in a white, featureless space, the girl stood motionless, blank-eyed, like a puppet. Two men stood in front of her, both eyeing her with twisted interest. One commented on her looks and questioned why she was with Scheme's group, suggesting they treat her better. The other noticed her high-quality equipment and pointed it out mockingly. Their leader speculated that she had simply logged in with valuable gear and left her device unattended. Noting her lack of resistance, he shifted the blame onto her and rationalized their actions. The two men moved in closer, practically drooling, pretending they wanted to call guards for her protection, while clearly implying something far more sinister. Panic surged through Skim's mind as he sprinted through the streets, searching desperately for the missing girl. His thoughts raced, weighed down by dread. If she took any damage while unconscious, he knew he wouldn't be able to explain his way out of this one. Not this time. Just then, his communication device buzzed. It was a video call from the man with the glasses. The man's first words were laced with suspicion as he asked whether the girl was safe. Skim, panting and exhausted, forced out a weak, breathless confirmation. But the man didn't buy it. He immediately demanded proof. He wanted to see her face. Caught off guard, Skim tried to deflect. He told the man to send the money first, stammering and correcting himself with a hasty excuse that he and the girl were in the middle of something. His heavy breathing, however, betrayed the lie. The man noticed. He pointed out Skim's condition, wondering aloud why he sounded so out of breath. Annoyed, Skim snapped and said he'd show the girl later because he was busy right now. The man, unconvinced, threw back a mocking response, demanding to know what exactly Skim planned to show. Without giving him another second, Skim hung up. Staring at the ended call, the man muttered angrily, calling Skim a bastard. An older man sitting beside him remained calm and unbothered. He told him to let it go, brushing off the situation as nothing serious. The man immediately apologized for the disturbance, referring to the older man respectfully as chairman. This older gentleman was none other than the chairman of the semi-young group. The chairman turned to the man with the glasses and reminded him of something vital, that Catherine was the heir to the entire semi-young empire. In his view, what could someone like Skim possibly do to change anything? He then addressed the man directly by name. Han Jamun. Han, still visibly concerned, asked the chairman why he would trust someone like Skim with the young lady's safety. If healing her inside the game was really possible, wouldn't it be better for them to take care of her directly? The chairman, however, was unmoved. He brushed off the idea of treatment, saying it was hopeless anyway. If Catherine were to die, he said, what difference would it really make? Han's eyes widened in shock at the cold response. Continuing, the chairman reflected on Catherine's life. She had lived bound by the expectations of the semi-young bloodline, never able to make her own choices. The only thing she had chosen freely was entering heaven's door. That virtual world was her escape. It gave her the freedom she never had in reality. To him, it was far better that her final sight be something of her choosing, rather than the ceiling of a hospital room. Back in the game, Skim kept running through the massive city, frustration bubbling up. The game's realism was overwhelming. Even the sensation of running out of breath was simulated. He cursed the size of the town, questioning how he was ever going to find her in a place this huge. Then, an idea sparked in his mind. He recalled something strange that had happened in the dungeon earlier. Even though he hadn't done anything wrong, he'd somehow earned a Goblin point. That triggered the unlock of a new skill. His eyes widened as the system displayed the newly unlocked ability, Goblin HP Share. He read the description. Uses your HP to recover the Goblin's HP by the same percentage. It didn't impress him. Why would he need to heal something that barely even got hit? He quickly moved on to check for other new skills, and one caught his attention, Goblin Throwing. The ability simply allowed him to throw the Goblin in any direction. That one at least seemed useful. Without hesitation, Skim summoned his Goblin companion. The creature appeared instantly, and Skim grabbed it, holding it like a paper plane. Looking up into the sky, he took aim and hurled the Goblin with all his strength. The Goblin soared through the air, shouting with excitement. Suddenly, mid-flight, it pointed toward a direction, signaling the girl's location. Skim followed the Goblin's finger and, recognizing the direction, burst out in laughter and called her name. He arrived on the scene like a dramatic hero, landing in front of the two men standing over the girl. With a cocky attitude and a tongue flick that screamed troublemaker, he made a bold declaration, claiming to have come to pick her up and insisting they'd be together forever. The two men recognized him immediately. With disdain in their voices, they acknowledged that it was the same ugly guy from before. One of them taunted him, asking if he still hadn't given up. They both declared that they were the ones who'd make the lady feel good. Scheme's face twisted in anger. He shouted back, saying he wasn't dragging her around for that reason, and demanded to know who they even were. The men responded with arrogant flair. They called themselves the handsome duo who saved women in danger just for fun. That only pushed Scheme further into rage. He yelled that Catherine was in danger because of them in the first place. Offended, the two men lashed out, charging at him with threats. They called him an ugly bastard and told him to die. But before they could land a blow, Scheme's Goblin stepped in. With swift, brutal efficiency, the Goblin beat both of them down. In an instant, the arrogant duo was lying unconscious on the ground, covered in blood. After beating those two arrogant punks to a bloody pulp, our protagonist bursts into laughter, shouting out loud like a man possessed. "Wah! Serves you right, you dumb bastards. How does it feel to lose to an ugly guy?" I said, "How does it?" His hysterical laughter echoes through the streets like a villain's final monologue. It rings so loud, even the city guard station blocks away start perking up. What's that sound? Ha 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 ha. Meanwhile, still giggling like a maniac, our protagonist grabbed Catherine's hand and starts dragging her along by the rope. But just as he rounds the corner, his eyes widen. He sees something up ahead. His laughter dies instantly. I'm fucked. Just as Scheme Chulsuz was leaving the area with his wife, thinking the trouble was behind him, a soldier suddenly appeared and blocked their path. His spear was raised with sharp intent, and he accused Scheme of murder and kidnapping, his voice loud and unwavering. Scheme, caught off guard, instinctively raised both hands in surrender. He tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, that he was only defending himself, but even to his own ears, the excuse sounded painfully weak. In his mind, Scheme was already weighing his options. The excuse wouldn't hold water, and he knew he didn't have the time to argue. There was only one soldier in front of him, and he seriously considered taking him down before reinforcements showed up. But just as that dangerous thought crept in, something unexpected happened. A goblin casually walked toward the soldier with a sly grin, almost as if it were part of some strange plan. And then, out of nowhere, an old bald man appeared and placed a hand on the soldier's shoulder, interrupting the tension with a cheerful voice. He acted like he'd been looking for Scheme everywhere, drawing the soldier's attention away. Scheme's eyes widened in disbelief. He recognized the old man, a smooth-talking liar he'd encountered before. Confused and suspicious, he asked what the man was doing here, but the old man leaned in and quietly warned him. Killing a god NPC, he explained, would trigger consequences far worse than Scheme could handle. If Scheme didn't want to be relentlessly hunted by NPCs, he needed to stay calm and play along. The old man promised to handle the situation. With surprising confidence, the old man then turned to the soldier and thanked him for his service. But the soldier wasn't convinced. He eyed the old man cautiously, questioning their connection and growing more suspicious by the second. When he noticed the pouch hidden behind the old man's back, he demanded to know what it was. In response, the old man activated a skill, NPC gifting. This ability was meant to improve relationships with NPCs through thoughtful presence. Holding out a pouch of gold, he placed a friendly hand on the soldier's shoulder and offered it as a silent bribe, hoping to settle things peacefully. At first, the soldier was stunned by the amount of gold, but the moment passed quickly and his expression twisted with rage. Grabbing the old man by the collar, he exploded in fury, shouting at him for trying to bribe an honest man. What was meant to raise goodwill had the exact opposite effect. Their relationship level dropped instantly. Scheme watched the whole thing unfold in stunned silence. The soldier arrested the old man on the spot, while leaving him completely untouched. For a brief moment, Scheme stared at the scene with a strange mix of confusion and gratitude. Somehow, that slippery old man had managed to get arrested in his place. And as the soldier dragged him away, Scheme couldn't help but wonder. Was he actually a good guy after all? Sometime later, Scheme Chulsuz found himself standing at the gates of the Grand Palace, frustration bubbling as he argued with one of the soldiers guarding the entrance. He asked, almost demanding, why he wasn't allowed inside. But the soldier didn't even flinch, his expression remained blank, and his answer was firm. No means no. Scheme tried again, insisting that the main quest was supposed to begin here, inside this palace. But he was met with the same unshakable silence. Then, from nearby, a relaxed voice cut through the tension. Leaning casually against a wall, a blonde-haired man watched Scheme with an amused smirk. He told him not to bother. That door wasn't going to open anytime soon. Scheme turned, a little annoyed and slightly curious. He asked who the guy was. The blonde simply pointed at himself with a laid-back smile and introduced himself as Shin. Scheme's eyes flicked to the icon floating above Shin's head. A blinking exclamation mark. His thoughts immediately clicked into place. This idiot was giving him a quest. Shin stared at Scheme with a strange intensity that didn't match his chill demeanor, then smiled gently and pointed out that Scheme must be new in town, judging by the racket he was making at the gate. He even went as far as to compliment Scheme's eyes. That alone made Scheme pull a face so strange. Even he didn't know what kind of expression it was. But Shin wasn't done. He explained that Scheme had the look of an adventurer, someone capable. And then, without warning, he pointed right at Scheme and suggested he help with something. Something about a lost ruin. Something about proving his worth. Scheme didn't wait for the rest. He immediately brought up his system panel and skipped the entire speech. Still smiling, Shin tried to continue, promising that if Scheme helped, he'd let him into the castle. Scheme skipped that too. Shin tried again, this time losing his patience and starting to curse. But the moment he opened his mouth, Scheme skipped that as well. Just then, a notification popped up in front of Scheme. Main quest. Show your skills, bring the core from the golem that's present in the lost ruins, and prove your skills to Shin. Core of the Golem 01. Reward 250G. Later, inside the dungeon, known as the Lost Ruins, Scheme stood at the edge of a dangerous-looking lava pool. He let out a frustrated sigh, muttering to himself that someone really should have told him what kind of dungeon this was. Cursing the NPC under his breath, he stared into the bubbling heat below. With his arms crossed and sweat trickling down his face, he scanned the zone ahead. So this was the famous Lost Ruin, huh? He smirked dryly to himself. Are you sure the name isn't Lost Lives? He glanced back at the one following him, his half-slave wife. Knowing he couldn't leave her behind, he calculated his approach. With his maxed-out agility, getting across would be a breeze for him alone. But this time, he had to make it through while ensuring she stayed completely safe without taking a single hit. And that made all the difference. Standing at the edge of the lava pool, Scheme Chulsuz let out a sigh and waved his hand. Even though he didn't particularly like the person behind him, he couldn't stand the thought of her getting hurt. Muttering to himself, he admitted, I don't like you, but I don't want to deal with you getting hurt either. He handed the rope to the goblin beside him and instructed, Here, Goblin, I'll call you with Rally, so keep a hold of that leash. With the rope now tied securely, Scheme crouched down into a sprinter's stance, just like an athlete preparing to launch. He took one deep breath, and in a single explosive motion, he leapt across the lava. His jump carried him smoothly to the other side, landing with grace and speed. From his new position, he shouted, Now, Goblin, and activated his Goblin Summoner skill, Rally. Responding instantly, the Goblin grinned that usual ugly grin and jumped with surprising energy. With one solid bounce, he made it across and landed clumsily but safely in front of Scheme. But the girl, his half-slave wife, was still stranded on the far side, with the rope still tied to the goblin. Scheme gave a small, satisfied smile as he watched the plan in action. Oh wow, this really is a useful skill, he thought, impressed. But then everything started going wrong. The goblin, noticing the rope was still connected, turned to look back. The sudden tautness of the rope, combined with the pull from the goblin's landing, caused the girl to get yanked forward, dangerously close to the edge of the lava. Her feet stumbled forward, nearly sliding straight into the molten pool. Schem's eyes went wide. "No, she's falling in," he shouted. Panic surged through his voice. "Goblin, do something, damn it." The goblin, confused but trying to follow orders, pulled hard on the rope. Too hard. The girl went flying through the air, flung across the lava like a rag doll. Scheme froze in disbelief, his hand over his face, peeking through the gaps in his fingers as she crash-landed on the ground in front of him, in a ridiculous, tangled-up position. He stared at her in horror. "Catherine," he called out. His expression shifted from stunned to pure panic as he dropped to his knees beside her. Her eyes were shut, and she wasn't moving. "Hey, wake up. You can't die in a place like this. Or I'm completely screwed." His voice cracked with urgency. "Please, get a hold of yourself." But Catherine wasn't hearing him. Somewhere in her unconscious mind, she was reliving a dark, buried memory. She saw her home. Her father stood before her, holding a golf bat in his hand, anger twisting his face. "You came home late because you were out with your friends?" he said coldly. "I've told you many times, friends at your age are nothing but fleeting, worthless nobodies who were bound to be forgotten." Tears welled up in her eyes as he raised the bat. "With your shortened skirt and makeup that makes you look like some whore," he snarled, "have you decided to live the same way as those subhuman filth?" His voice echoed louder and harsher. "What will people think of me when they find out I have a daughter like this? I'll teach you a lesson today. You are my only flaw." Catherine had fallen to the floor, sobbing, hands clasped together as she begged. "I am sorry. I won't do it again. I'll never do it again." Catherine kept crying, apologizing again and again, begging for help. Her voice broke as she cried for the only person she hoped could save her. "Mom, Mom, Dad's trying to kill me," she screamed, voice trembling in desperation. "Please stop him. Please do something." The only response was silence. Her mother watched from behind a closed door, hiding, refusing to intervene, and then quietly left the room. The father's gaze turned cold and threatening as he looked at Catherine, saying she was his only flower, his possession. Suddenly, the scene shifted to the present. Our protagonist, Scheme Chul-Suz, called out Catherine's name, sweat dripping down his face from the tension. A goblin nearby made a strange, sharp noise, and Scheme shot back with a sarcastic comment, mocking the idea that someone like the goblin would ever experience the warmth of a woman, and even joked that it should take this chance to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But inside, Scheme was sweating nervously. Mouth-to-mouth? In this game? He knew it wasn't possible to actually blow air and feel touch here. Still, when he looked down at Catherine's blank, lifeless face, he thought maybe it didn't matter. She was already gone. Maybe trying was worth a shot. Kneeling beside her, he gently held her face, recalling stories about a mysterious healing technique called Nice Samarami, or something like that. Maybe the mental shock of his attempt could jolt her awake. He told himself this wasn't about any selfish desire. It was the right thing to do. He was performing CPR, trying to bring her back. Just as he leaned in, almost touching his lips to hers, a sudden interruption appeared. The butler, Paul, popped up on a video call panel in front of him, cutting through the tension without any greeting. Without missing a beat, Paul bluntly asked how the lady was doing, adding a sharp curse for good measure. As soon as the butler appeared on the video panel, Scheme panicked and shouted, "Muha?" The butler. The sight of him alone was enough to jolt him into full-blown anxiety. But Muha wasn't here to chit-chat. With a deathly serious glare, the butler stared him down. "So this is what you wanted to show me. I'll kill you." Scheme frantically waved his hands and tried to explain. No, I swear she's fine. She's not dead at all. Please, just listen." But Muha wasn't fooled. His tone was sharp but controlled as he cut through the chaos. "I'm well aware that she's doing fine. I'm logged into the game right now for work. The medical team's sending me her real-time vitals. Her gear is the best available for her level. Unless you somehow end up in a hidden dungeon, she won't take any lethal damage." That hit Scheme like a wave of relief. So, she wasn't dead. Not even close. Muha continued, his voice colder now. "The reason I'm here is simple. I'm making sure not even a single strand of your filthy hair touches the young miss while she's unconscious. Now show me how she's. Before he could finish, Scheme smashed the call panel and ended the call on the spot. There was no way he was letting that conversation go any further. On the other side, Muha stared at the blank screen, fists clenched, teeth grinding. His anger didn't need words. Meanwhile, Scheme turned toward the goblins and said flatly, "You heard him." The goblins, with their glowing eyes, turned to look at Catherine, Scheme's half-slave wife, with wide grins on their faces. Scheme let out a tired sigh. "We're running to the boss room. Full speed. Let's go." The goblins cackled in response, and just like that, they were off. Moments later, inside a dimly lit dungeon, Scheme was sprinting for his life, dodging traps and evading a massive rolling boulder. In a panic, he grabbed Catherine, still unconscious, and without hesitation, used her like a skateboard. Standing on her back, he slid across the dungeon floor, dodging obstacles while the goblins acrobatically avoided traps. At this point, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to think even dumber than a goblin. A little while later, the team came to a broken bridge. With no hesitation, one of the goblins hurled Catherine across to the other side. She landed with a solid thud. Then, tying a rope to her, the goblins created a makeshift line and helped Scheme cross safely by crawling across like a tightrope artist. Finally, they reached the boss room. Standing before them was a massive golem. Scheme, still full of chaotic energy, grabbed Catherine once more, this time using her as a weapon, and hurled her straight at the golem like a human javelin. The golem reacted instantly, punching her midair and knocking her flat. Scheme's face went pale. Beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks. In his head, all he could think was, "Oh no. I got too excited and just tossed her like a projectile." Right then, a system notification appeared before his eyes. "You have gained a goblin point." He clenched his fists, rage bubbling inside him. Standing beside the goblins, he shouted, "How dare you attack my multi-purpose anti-trap diffuser?" Then, pointing at the golem like a war general, he barked, "Finish him in one hit, goblins." As the goblins charged ahead with crazed laughter, Catherine still sat slumped on the ground in the background, clearly having the roughest day of her in-game life. Just when it seemed like she was completely out, Catherine's hand twitched, barely noticeable, but it moved. Unconscious or not, something inside her was stirring. Back in the middle of the chaos, the golem launched a rocket punch straight at Scheme. The massive fist blasted forward with terrifying speed, and when it hit, an ear-shattering explosion followed. Smoke and dust filled the air, but from within it, one of the goblins emerged with a devilish grin. Without hesitation, the goblin leaped through the smoke and drove its weapon straight through the golem's body with a single, clean strike. Scheme stood with arms crossed, oozing confidence. "Oomph, I'm not even phased," he said coolly. "Now I just need to bring back the core of the golem." But before he could take a step, something unexpected happened. The golem's body, despite being pierced, started reforming. Bit by bit, it pulled itself back together, larger, fiercer than before. Its eyes glowed, and it stood tall, looming over Scheme like a nightmare. The confident smirk on Scheme's face vanished. What the fuck? Why did it get bigger? Panic set in, but so did excitement. He was sweating, but with a manic grin, he shouted, "Whatever, Goblin, just destroy it." At his command, the Goblin charged again, landing a devastating strike. This time, the system registered an insane number, 999 damage, and the golem crumbled to the ground. Scheme wiped the sweat off his brow, smiling in disbelief. "Good. Now we finally..." He didn't even get to finish his sentence. With a sudden jolt, the golem's body reassembled once again. Pink lightning crackled around it. The entire room lit up with its fierce energy. Scheme's face twisted with frustration. "Hey, stop resurrecting, you damn rock pile." The golem didn't care. It attacked again, and Scheme quickly activated his goblin summoner skill, Rally. "Hey, don't destroy it this time," he shouted. "Just block the attacks. Every time you kill it, it gets stronger." But goblins were goblins. One of them jumped in front of the punch, tanked it like a champ, and caused another massive explosion that blew up everything behind them. Scheme barely dodged the blast, already screaming and running for his life. Behind him, the golem continued its onslaught. Every punch caused another explosion, tearing through the dungeon. Scheme weaved between falling debris, trying to stay alive. As he ran, he thought, if I don't destroy the core, this thing's gonna keep coming back. Forever. He suddenly remembered what the old man had said earlier about the golem's weakness being its core. But I don't have a special pointer system like the Evaton Guild. How the hell am I supposed to find it? Scheme glanced over his shoulder. The golem wasn't letting up. Should I just destroy every piece of it? What if it levels up again? What if it ends up stronger than even the goblins? Just then, Catherine, still lying on the ground, her usual blank expression was there. But then, everything changed. The golem's massive fist was coming right for her. And in that split second, her mind snapped back to that terrifying moment, back in the hidden dungeon where she had once faced a monster just like this. Her face twisted in horror as the memory overwhelmed her. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and then, with a scream ripping from her throat, her consciousness fully returned, and she started shouting in panic, her entire body trembling with fear. The calm blank slate she once wore was gone, replaced with pure terror. So that's everything that's happened so far. I hope you enjoyed the video. And hey, I've just uploaded a brand new manhwa recap, so if you're curious, go ahead and click the video showing up on your screen right now. Thanks a ton for watching, and if you don't want to miss the next part of this manhwa, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you'll get notified the moment it drops.